6 o'clock, and we're going to get started. If everyone take your seat. Let's see. The first thing on our agenda is the approval of the July invoices. We'll need a motion for approval.
I move that we accept the July invoices.
Motion by Ms. Holland.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Solsky. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion approved. Approval for the July 9th, 2015 minutes. Need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Caldwell makes a motion.
I'll second.
Ms. Holland second. Oh, that's the wrong word. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion approved. Next is the approval of the July 14th, 2015 minutes. Need a motion to approve.
I make a motion.
Motion by Ms. Mizell,
Second.
second by Mr. Caldwell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion approved. Next is the approval of the August agenda.
I make a motion.
We have one postponement there, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the August agenda.
Motion by Mr. Shirley. Second by Mr. Moran. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion approved. Items for postponement and withdrawal. We do have one postponed, which is the Oakleaf Townhomes. Anyone here for the Oakleaf Townhomes? It is postponed. Be heard next month. That's it. If anyone is here for the Oakleaf Townhomes, I mean, not Oakleaf, yeah, Oakleaf Townhomes, it is postponed. It'll be heard next month. And then the consent agenda, we have nothing for consent tonight. Well, I guess our first thing up is the Whining Oaks Cluster subdivision. Should have done that before. We gotta go with it now. Done
Go
approved
for
it.
it.
Yep.
So Whining Oaks Cluster subdivision, we have to go with it now.
Not bad.
Joe?
I didn't necessarily have anything to add at this point. I think Charlie was maybe gonna give a summary introduction or summary of where we are in the process.
Can that be done in one evening? I believe all we were doing for tonight was Mr. Simpson had objected based on not getting to cross-examine the expert witnesses of the applicant. And at our last gathering, whenever that was, the commission agreed that he had the right to cross-examine. So rather than continue doing anything that night, since there were no experts there to cross-examine, we postponed until tonight. The only things then remaining would be whatever cross-examination, and as I understand it, those witnesses are not going to be here, so there won't actually be the cross-examination. I'm sure there'll probably a couple of arguments about that. And then the commission will take whatever action it deems appropriate on the application.
So with that being said, Charlie, with the nobody here to cross-examine, can we just move on with it now, or?
Well, again, I dare say somebody's going to want to say a little something about that. I would certainly prefer we go on from there, but again, I'm sure someone's going to have something to say about that. And then when they've said whatever it is they're going to say, I'm sure the other Bruce would probably want to say something in response.
Very briefly, Mr. Chairman and members of the
Just one
commission.
more second. We do have 4 members that weren't here last time. And there was some discussion that these members wouldn't be voting tonight on this application. Some of them have brought up some concerns. So I'd like to hear those first. and get that over with before we do anything else, if that's okay.
I'm sorry, yes. Okay.
If that's okay, Mr. Simpson, let's do that first.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Wiseman?
for the record, I wish to register a strong objection to the chair's decision to exclude those who were absent those commissioners who were absent at the July meeting from voting on old business. 2 reasons. First, I know of no other situation where one is required to demonstrate the knowledge of the issues in question before voting. And second, I feel that those 4 of us who were absent probably have sufficient information from other meetings to be knowledgeable enough to be able to vote. Thank you.
Is that all?
That's it, what I have to say, yes.
So, at this point in time, if there's no motion to have you guys included into this vote, then we'll just ask you guys to not vote on this issue.
If I might suggest, and I don't know if this will be appreciated any more than the original suggestion, but generally I find it probably better for all the commissioners if those who are not participating actually sit elsewhere during the consideration. That's simply because if everybody's up here, somebody's going to object that, maybe they were influencing
Yes.
and whatnot. And again, I'm being a little squeamish perhaps, but I just as soon keep as many issues down as possible.
So at this time, if you guys could recuse yourself.
Can I ask a
Go ahead,
question, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman?
Charlie.
Is any of the other commissioners that weren't present, do they have an opinion on this too?
I agree with Frank. I think we have a sufficient amount of information, to make a rational judgment.
Speak up a little bit, yes, so everybody can.
I think I agree with Frank. I think we do have a sufficient amount of knowledge with it, to make a good judgment. So,
You guys can make a motion to stay here and get a second, we'll have to vote on it. That's up to you guys, if that's what you want to do. But it'd be the full commission voting on this. But if you're not going to make a motion, then we'll ask you to recuse yourself.
And I agree with Frank too, because all of the notes from that meeting was sent to us, including the testimony from the expert witnesses was sent to us that night. So with that being said, things come up to where, sometimes we can't help missing. Emergencies happen. So with that being said, that was the only one that I missed out of all of these for the last 8 months for Winding Oaks. So I don't think we should be penalized for missing one. So I think a motion should be put down to where we should be able to be added back into the vote.
Is that a motion?
How would I word it?
Just, I suppose you would say move to overrule the chair and to allow full participation of all 9 members.
I move to overrule the chair to allow for participation of all 9 members in the voting of Winding Oaks Cluster Subdivision, ZMA 2015-15.
Mr. Chairman, please note my objection to planning commissioners who were not present during the hearing of this matter back on June the 9th from considering this case. This was advertised by the applicant as being a new plan, a new hearing, new access issues, new development plan, new stormwater plan, etc. And a lot of testimony. I don't know what was sent to the folks that weren't here, but in terms of fairness, in terms of due process, in terms of what the law requires, it requires those parties to be here and to listen to all the evidence. And on that basis, I would object to those people as much as they want to attend, and I appreciate their interest in trying to take part in the decision, with respect to the principles of due process and fair play, I would object to those people, planning commissioners who were not here on the 11th of June, from voting.
Motion noted. Or
Charlie, can I make a comment?
Objection noted.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I understand where you four are coming from. I know there are extenuating circumstances that you can't be here, family reasons and employment reasons and other things. However, I do applaud you for wanting to vote on this matter, but being at that meeting, there is no way that you could understand everything that went on in that meeting through notes. I took 5 pages of notes, both sides from that meeting. So I just want you to know where I'm coming from on that.
Okay, with that comment, we do have a motion by Ms. Mizell.
I just want to
Yes,
note,
sir,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman, for the record, my name is Bruce Langford. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I just want to note that it seems to me that it's a matter of individual discretion about whether or not a member of this commission should be allowed to vote. I think they should be allowed to make that decision. I don't care which way they decide, but I just want to I have no objection to all 9 voting. I have no objection to the 5 voting. I think it's an individual decision and should be made by the individuals who are members of this commission.
So on that note, we have a motion by Ms. Mizell. We need a second.
I second it.
A second by Mr. Wiseman. We'll do a roll call on this, please. Mr. Wiseman,
Yes.
Mr. Shirley,
Yes.
Ms. Holland,
No.
Mr. Caldwell,
Yes.
Mr. Moran,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
No.
Ms. Mizell,
Yes.
Mr. Solsky.
No.
It's 5-3. Motion carries. Be allowed to stay.
There you go.
Upon that, we need to, since there are no expert witnesses, Mr. Simpson to cross-examine, public hearing is closed, and I think we can go on now and discuss amongst ourselves whether we want to go with this or not.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect to the chair's inclination, I need to renew my motion and objection that I filed prior to the last regular scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission, that in this particular instance, the applicant introduced evidence by way of written documents, one of which from the geotechnical person was actually tendered on December 10th, 2014, which was prior to the first hearing of this case under a different plan. There were no subsequent changes, amendments, or reports tendered by the geotech person, despite the radical change in the development plan. It's moving around in different areas. Same holds true for the traffic engineer. Same holds true for the engineer that designed the stormwater. We wanted the opportunity to question those persons and cross-examine them. As you will recall, I indicated to you that based upon the evidence that was introduced, absent testimony from the reports, the only way you could resolve this case was to deny it based upon the evidence that would be legally considerable by you all as a decision-making body. Secondly, it was brought out in the June meeting at the close of the hearing that the chair had indicated to Mr. Langford that it wouldn't be, or maybe it was the July meeting, first July meeting, that it wouldn't be necessary to bring experts to the meeting, and he didn't bring them. And this was, I'm sorry, back in June, it was indicated they didn't need to bring the witnesses to the June hearing, so he didn't bring them. And I found that puzzling and objectionable on the basis that this was an applicant who has a burden of proof legally to establish certain criteria factually as a matter of law and as a matter of fact. And he was given guidance to do certain things that I wasn't aware of. No one notified us whether to bring witnesses or not to bring witnesses, and Mr. Langford didn't bring witnesses, and with the chair's direction. And so we object to that. And, I understand the community's interest. The folks that you sit here, you don't get paid anything. You're asked to make decisions, and someone's going to be unhappy at the end of the day if there's opposition. I appreciate that. I've been doing this for quite a while. So I understand the constraints you're under and the frustrations, certainly wanting to vote and do what you believe is the right thing to do in a given case based upon the evidence. And at the end of the day, these cases are really not governed by anything other than what the law requires a decision to be based on, and that's findings of fact of legally relevant evidence that's introduced consistent with the conformities of the law, with the opportunity for that witness and that evidence to be evaluated by cross-examination so that you get a better understanding, a clearer picture, if you will, of what that evidence actually is and how it ought to be evaluated and its credibility. We were denied that right. And the laws that govern decision-making, as I indicated previously in my motion, which I'm renewing at this point, require that evidence such as introduced in written reports by experts, that those experts be made available for cross-examination. Now, we scheduled again tonight a hearing. Mr. Langford was going to bring those witnesses. And the exclusive purpose of meeting tonight was to give us the opportunity to cross-examine those three experts that tendered reports but who didn't attend the June meeting of the Planning Commission. And I was informed a couple of days ago when I called Mr. Langford, and he indicated he would not be bringing those witnesses. So your decision was postponed to allow cross-examination, and now those witnesses aren't going to be introduced. It's pretty clear to me that the applicant has no intention of submitting his experts to a thorough assessment to evaluate their credibility, to evaluate their competency of the reports that were tendered. I think you need to seriously consider that deficit as you evaluate what your decision is going to be in this case. And based upon that failure to bring the witnesses and a standard that you need to set for future hearings of this nature where people are contesting whether a given application ought to be approved or not, fair play says, you're right. You're right, Mr. Simpson. He should bring his witnesses here. He didn't. And now we're going to be asked to make a decision when those witnesses didn't appear, weren't brought before us so we could evaluate whether they knew what they were talking about and whether or not a December geotech report could apply to a different plan that wasn't in existence when he did his report. When there's undisputed number of sinkholes around and on this property where the public's at serious risk and future residents are serious at risk, not to have that testimony.
Mr. Simpson.
I'd like to.
Yes, I'd like to stop right here. We've heard all these comments before. Your objection is noted that you didn't get to cross-examine his experts. I would like to stop it right there. I think this
fine.
board is ready to move on with this.
I appreciate your consideration of my objection.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to strike everything he said that had to do with the merits of this application. If that's possible to do, I don't know if it is or not.
Yeah, no,
Do you want me to respond or not?
not necessarily. It's up to you. I'll give you a couple minutes, but
Well, let me just say very quickly. We had an application that we filed and we withdrew. We filed this application on the same property the next month. Same number of acres, same zoning classification change, same roads involved, same number of lots involved, same number of houses involved, same number of cars involved, and same number of people are going to be living in those houses and driving those cars. And I said, and I made arrangements through Mr. Kane and through the Planning Commission to adopt the record that I had previously made with those people testifying. And he had an opportunity to examine all those people and did. He crossed those people. They were here and he cross-examined them about this property, these acres, these lots, these cars, these roads, this traffic, all of that. He cross-examined them. Now, there are two additions. I think Ms. Zimmerman put into the record an update on the traffic, and she said no change. You're changing the design, but that doesn't change my report. And I think Andy Holmes put a report into the record that said no change. It'll be handled as it's supposed to be handled. That is, in accordance with the planning and zoning regulations about how you build around sinkholes and how you handle stormwater runoff. And I'm saying to you, that's a de minimis change. It's very minimal. He's had ample opportunity to cross-examine those people on this property, this zone change, these acres, this classification, and all of that. Mr. Kane, if you'll note, has not changed his report. His report still stands, and his report is a recommendation of approval. And I ask that you do that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Charlie, let me ask you something. I shared with you that I had made 5 pages of notes throughout all these hearings and have summarized this, that like in 10 different sections that I've gone through. Would it be okay if I read those? Or,
Well, when you all finish your discussion, I believe so. yeah.
okay, all right.
I think we need to start with some discussion where we're at as far as, are we ready to move forward with this? Do we want to stop, say, hey, he should have brought his witnesses tonight? Do we need to postpone again? Where do we want to go from here? It's up to the commission's discussion.
I want to move on with it, Mr. Chairman.
I kind of agree.
Mr. Chairman, I can make that easy in a way. If you want those witnesses, if you think they will add to this application, I will bring those at the next meeting. We've waived the 60-day requirement. We're working with you. We're cooperating. We don't have to move on tonight, but if you want to move on tonight, we're ready. But I'll bring them next month if you think they will add anything to what you already know.
So we have that option. What's the?
Now, Mr. Chairman, we were supposed to bring them tonight.
Yes, sir, we
And
understand.
in fairness to the
At
people
this
that
point,
come
guys,
to these meetings,
listen, at this point, public discussion
shouldn't be up to him
This
to
is
make the
up to this
decision.
commission now. The public discussion is done. We're stopping right there.
Mr. Chairman, he
at
was
this-
supposed to bring them tonight.
Yes, sir, I
He didn't
understand,
bring
but
them.
he did
shouldn't be
not. There's
given
nothing
ever
we
how
can do
long he
about it. We're
wants.
not gonna cry over spilt milk. We are up here tonight. We're gonna make this, we're gonna do whatever this commission decides to do. No more public discussion. Thank you. Anybody have anything? I'm tell you what I think. I think both sides have put up a good argument. This side's done really well. This side's done really well. It all comes down to, did he follow the ordinances and the comprehensive plan that we have got in place that we are to follow? That's my opinion. I think that's what we should base this decision on. All of us have feelings here or there as to whether this is right or that's right. But we have got to follow the comp plan and our ordinances. Does anybody else have
I
any
agree
other?
100% with you, Mr. Chairman.
Does anybody else have any other discussion?
Well, in another section, I summarized parts. Let me read this.
Okay,
This
go
was
ahead, Ms.
very
Holland.
important. This is, A, the opposition had no opportunity to cross-examine those experts concerning any supplementation they had made to their earlier reports in conjunction with the new application. The opposition cross-examined experts concerning the earlier reports. The supplementation should therefore be stricken from the record. Though the new plan is different from the original, it occupies the same acreage and same soil types. It accesses the same state road. The earlier reports satisfactorily address this property. The number of proposed dwelling units is minimal compared to the hundreds of houses already existing on these soils and accessing this road. Therefore, I feel it's appropriate to go ahead and take action on this tonight. That's my feelings. Now, Charlie, if you think I need to address those other 10 concerns?
Those are your points. You address them whenever you want to. You make them part of whatever you want to do with
Do you
it.
think it'll help in your how you wanna go forward?
With the ones that weren't here, maybe it'll kindly bring you up to date a little bit. The notes are, the way I headlined it, findings using Bruce Simpson's format, following the objections set out in his findings, proposed findings. Sections 1A and 1B are related to meeting requirements for a zone map amendment. The objection is inapplicable. Applicant has satisfied the necessary submittal requirements. Staff and commission require nothing further for the zone change application. B, Section 2 is related to preservation of farmland. A cluster that complies with the cluster regulations preserves farmland by that compliance. C, Section 2 is related to generation of significant additional stormwater runoff than is experienced currently. The testimony and staff indicate this need can be adequately addressed. Section D, Section 2 is related to impact on karst features. Areas of Scott County with similar karst features have been developed as clusters without difficulty. E, Section 2 is related to the cluster utilizing septic tanks. Gene Thomas of WEDCO, the agency with jurisdiction over sewage disposal, has preliminarily approved the use of septic tanks. F, Section 2 is related to daily traffic trip generation. The number of dwelling units in this cluster is insignificant compared to existing residential units in the immediate area using the same roads. G, Section 2 is related to predominant land use on Cane Run Road in the past. The use of cluster development has been permitted in this area for years. The traditional land uses and the cluster resident must exercise care as they coexist on this and every other Scott County road. H, Section 2 is related to alleged conflicts with goals and objectives in the comprehensive plan. Cluster developments were devised and adopted as means of providing desirable residential use while accomplishing the rural goals and objectives. I, Section 2 is relating to the additional septic tanks this cluster would require in the area. This number of septic tanks in the proposed cluster is insignificant compared to the number of residences that have been made in this immediate area for decades. J, Section 2 is related to alleged conflicts between agriculture and non-agriculture uses in the rural areas. The cluster ordinance was adopted years ago for such conflicts, to deal with such conflicts. And I just want to add, my husband is a farmer. He's got, our farm is out in the county. We have narrow roads. He has to take a tractor or a trailer hauling cattle with all the time. We have to pull over on the side of the road. We have holes throughout the farm that we have to deal with, hoping cattle won't step in them, break a leg, employees working on the farm. So it's in areas all over the county that has to deal with these same issues. So it's not just one area of the county you have to deal with. So therefore, I'm ready to make a motion.
If I might note one thing, I was reading down through Mr. Simpson's proposed findings as you read them. Yours were alphabetical order. His were actually small case Roman numerals, but same
okay.
order. So
Okay.
the same topics, but when you called it J, it's actually whatever that is,
That's
6 or 7.
That's for me. Yeah, that's just for me. Yeah.
So I believe you hit each of his comments.
Good job, Jan.
Yes, well said.
Nice, yeah. Is there any more discussion? Anybody else? Anything they'd like to add, or?
If I might ask, Janet talked about what we're going to do about the expert situation. And I would prefer you all probably take action on that first. Janet talked about excluding from the record any updates that they did not get a chance to cross-examine on. Bruce has said that even though it's a different application, it's the same acreage, et cetera, as Janet, I think, touched on. My suggestion is that a motion to strike any update that was not subject to Mr. Simpson's cross-examination be stricken and not considered. That still allows, of course, full consideration of everything said in their initial testimony and initial cross-examination. But that will make it clear that the additional stuff is not what's supporting any decision that's made tonight, because they didn't get a chance to cross-examine the additional stuff.
Would anybody like to make a motion on what Charlie is saying? Does everybody understand what he's saying?
Mr. Chairman, I had one comment. Just these cluster developments all seem to be concentrated along ironworks. I mean, the cluster is, I think, a better alternative than taking a 150-acre farm and dividing it into 5-acre tracts. You are preserving 100 acres of, or nearly 100 acres of that farm permanently. It cannot be further subdivided. But we do have major concentration of clusters that are going in that area, and it seems like it's going to continue in that area. Several of them have not been developed at this point, but they've already been approved. I'm just looking down the road that I don't think we want all of our cluster developments to be all in the one spot of the county.
Well, the roads are bad.
Yeah, particularly with the roads that the infrastructure that's there, especially in regards to the highways and the side roads. And then you have probably more of a concentration of the karst areas and caves, and you've got some water issues through there that are probably more than they are in the rest of the county. Lancelot, I think your water issues, I don't think are going to be changed by this development, unless I'm wrong and somehow water is coming back underground to Lancelot. But everything's on the backside of that property that would flow away from Lancelot, not towards it. And what was the other issue? My big concern is just where we're going to draw the line on cluster after cluster after cluster on ironworks. If I don't want to see turn around 2 weeks from now and there's another application for a cluster on ironworks. I think there is a concern there. You've got to have our comprehensive plan talks about a balance between agriculture and development for rural development. We've got to be very careful about allowing everything to be concentrated in one area and not spread around the county in other areas.
That's something that will have to be addressed in our next
It is. It's got to be.
update,
It's got to be
comprehensive
addressed.
update.
Yeah, that's well said, Mr. Smith, but it's a matter of, I think too, if we're gonna go to that route, we're gonna have to completely change the cluster development ordinance somehow. But I don't think that we're gonna be able to tell people where they're gonna live. And everybody's situation is different, as you well know, as a farmer. When it comes time that they know I can't make a living as a farmer, what do I do with this land? You know, everybody's situation is different, and I don't see how we can dictate to individuals if they just so happen to have a farm on ironworks and not on Long Lick Pike, that, well, you can't sell your farm, you know, you go in the poorhouse, you know, can't even pay the property taxes on it, but we're not gonna let them sell it for a fair market price. That's communism or worse. And no, but if you've got one on Long Lick, that's probably less desirable for bigger, nicer homes, and that's just the way it is, then yes, you can do it. You've just gotta be, it's tough to be fair, we all know that. This is a very tough decision. That's why we've got a great planning staff. We've got a great field staff. They are overly strict to make sure once the final development plan has been approved, they make absolutely certain all the guidelines in accordance with whether it be widening the road, stormwater control, the CARS deal. That's why we have the staff we have. But I think that when we have, my personal opinion on this, when we have ordinance that are ongoing, have been for years, and a person buys a piece of property and he adheres to all of the rules that we set forth and our staff set forth, then it's pretty hard, me personally, to tell someone, no, you can't do that. I'll be perfectly honest with you. The reason I turned it down the first time is because in my mind, it did not adhere to all the ordinances because the main body was split into 3 tracks. And it clearly states that has to be 1 track. Now that they have changed that, in my mind, are adhering fully to our rules and regulations, it's hard for me now to sit up here and say that, no, you can't do it, for other reasons. I don't, that's just my personal opinion.
Well, we live in a complete different environment today. Farming and agriculture is not what it used to be. We've got a major manufacturing area that has taken a lot of the agriculture employees. It's very hard for farmers to survive now. And hard as it is, sometimes we still have to adapt to change, whether we like it or not. Whatever decision we make here tonight is not going to be 100% pleasing to everybody. I've had to make decisions that I didn't really want to make, sometimes being on this commission, but I have to do what our ordinances dictate, as this commission has to do.
Any further comments?
One other comment, just this is probably just a general comment. I think going forward, we need to keep in mind on our comprehensive plan, especially next year, we need to rewrite this comprehensive plan. We, if we as a community really have a desire to maintain our green space and these pretty areas that we talk about, we've got to find a way to live with the active farmers that are left in the county. And I don't know, speaking for myself, I'm sure some other farmers feel the same way. It's getting harder all the time with traffic and impatience. Impatience is the big problem. People just aren't patient with. When you're driving an old truck that's been beat around a farm for a couple 100,000 miles, it doesn't handle like a sports car. And,
I kind of agree with you on that statement that it's getting harder to get around the county, but that's going to be with growth. And folks, whether you like it or not, it's coming worse. It's going to get worse. This county is growing leaps and bounds. We are in the top 100 in the nation, the fastest growing counties in the nation. This place is growing, it's booming. The only thing we can try to do is try to control our stuff, try to get some roads in, get some infrastructure in. We need to be working with the county. We need to be working with the state. We need people calling their legislators. We need people calling their members of the fiscal court. We need to talk. We need to get some dialogue going between each other. We need to start making things happen. I see this area out there that's on this application tonight being one of the most desirable areas in the county to live in. It is one of the best farming parts of the county. That's a hard line to draw. I think the cluster development issue is we're getting to save quite a bit for farming, but we can still also appease some people by letting them live there. It's a great place to grow crops, probably a great place to grow a family. We got good road leading to that part with 62 being redone. You got the interstate close by. People are going to want to move to that area. Midway is fixing to boom. Anderson Communities is fixing to grow over there. That area is going to grow. What we need to do is get some dialogue with the state, some other folks to see if we can't get some work done on Ironworks, get some issues resolved. That's the only comment I have to make. Any more comments?
Well, I'd just like to say, I'm very confident in our staff following through on processes that has to be done. I'm sure developers come into the office often to ask you all questions, updates, if they're doing what they need to do. The process has to be followed through. I'm sure in the past, there's been situations where we've had attorneys, I'm not saying either of the guys here tonight, that have not followed through on processes like they should have. I know that's happened often. So it's a two-way street that everybody needs to work together on, and we'll just have to work with our comprehensive plan during the next update and make changes that we see fit, that we can do, but we still have to keep in mind we've got to face reality. We are a growing city and county, and we're going to have to learn to deal with the problems that come up.
Mr.
That's
Chairman?
my fact of
Yes, sir.
findings. I'm done.
Yes, sir, Mr. Wiseman.
We're called a planning commission, and there's an element of communism in that word.
There is, I know. Yeah, I agree. I've thought a lot about that, Frank. Believe it or not, yeah.
And we're responsible for making the best decisions we can based on the comprehensive plan. That's a big, important point. I've been thinking this week that if we were to make cluster developments, it would be better on Lone Lake or Fennel or somewhere where the farming is not nearly so good. Because I farm the clay soil, and I'd much rather be farming off Ironworks. And if I could afford it, I'd buy this property and farm there, you see, but I can't afford that. So I think we have to keep in mind that since we are a planning commission, we have to make the best decisions based on what's best overall for the farming and the population growth that we have. And it's a difficult decision.
Any more comments? If there's no more discussion, we'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make,
Did we ever get our
Oh, wait a minute,
motion
we need
to
to-
strike the, well, I mean, unless the commission says we don't want to do that, which is, that's certainly your prerogative.
Well, it's
but-
your advice that we do that, so we
But I
probably
would
should
prefer
do
you
that.
have a motion that strikes the supplemental information beyond what Mr. Simpson was allowed to cross-examine, which would be
Since-
the first night of testimony and not anything past that.
Since that was in my fact of findings, I will make a motion to do that.
That's a motion by Ms. Holland. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Second by
I thought you already had a second, I'm sorry.
Mr. Moran. I guess we'll do a roll call. Mr. Wiseman?
And we're voting on to exclude the
Mhm.
motion, yes on that.
Mr. Solsky?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Shirley?
Yes.
Ms. Holland?
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Mizell?
Yes.
Motion approved. All right, with that being done, I guess now we can entertain a motion either for or against the application.
If I might call your attention, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Holland addressed the proposed findings that Mr. Simpson submitted. Mr. Langford has also submitted some that should still be in the packet somewhere. Staff had included recommendations in their staff report. And whatever motion comes out of this, we need to have some findings of fact in that to justify it. Obviously, at the very minimum, it either is or is not consistent with the comp plan. They are or they are not in compliance with the applicable regs to that. That's more specifically addressed by the staff report. In fact, I'd suggest if approval is part of it, then that incorporates the staff's report. But also, each Bruce has submitted potential findings of fact, and they should be considered in whatever the motion is.
So upon Charlie's recommendation, we'll consider a motion.
And I'll stop
No.
pestering you here in a minute, Mr.
That's it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve this application along with the staff report, comprehensive plan. I feel like it does comply. The cluster development ordinances that we have at this date, I also feel like they apply. Mr. Perkins, is that enough of the, to be addressed?
Did you say that your motion, well, you did include that it was consistent with the comp plan and the ordinances. Did you say subject to or incorporating perhaps the staff report? I didn't catch that. I was
I
making
did.
notes.
I mentioned the staff report. Yes, sir.
And you may or may not need to refer to any of the findings that Bruce Langford submitted or that Bruce Simpson submitted. You've referred to the basis for it. You don't need to go further.
Yeah.
As always, I'm always picking further than I need to pick, so take that with a grain of salt.
So that would be my motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Shirley. Do we have a second?
Yes, I second.
A second by Ms. Holland. A yes vote is for approval, no vote be for disapproval. Ms. Mizell?
Say yes for approval?
Yes for approval.
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Ms. Holland?
Yes.
Mr. Shirley?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
No.
Mr. Solsky?
Yes.
Mr. Wiseman?
No.
5-3, motion approves.
Now, just for everyone's understanding, all the record will be compiled and shipped over to the fiscal court. Well, actually, we've done this before, haven't we?
Yes.
Anyway, it will be done and submitted to them. They will then coordinate dates for their meetings on it, and they will take it from here. Joe?
You need to say our commissioners. Mary always asks.
You're gonna ask them for that action tonight? All they've done is recommend on some changes. You're gonna have to vote on the preliminary subdivision plan.
There was also, before everybody leaves, did everybody leave? There was also in the original request.
And you don't, just give us a minute, Mr. Chairman. Joe, just a second.
Well, and that's what, well, there's times I'd like to.
Next on the agenda is the CNG fueling station. Matt?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, just note on the record, Ms. Mizell is recusing herself.
Ms. Mizell be recusing herself from this. And note for the record, all commissioners are present too. So. Go ahead, Matt, I'm sorry.
This application, PDP 2015-21, is a preliminary development plan for approval of a compressed natural gas fueling station for vehicles. The location of the project is south of Cherry Blossom Way Spur, which is a spur off of Cherry Blossom Way up near exit 129 on I-75. The property in question is zoned B2, which is our highway commercial zoning district. The proposed fueling stations for vehicles are allowed in this zoning district. The subject property is roughly 3 1/3 acres in size, and the applicant is requesting 3 waivers, as is included in the staff report and on the screen here. Looking more at this side. Can you go to the next slide? Looking at the zoning in the surrounding areas, you can see the project site is noted on the map on the screen. The properties to the east and the west are zoned highway commercial as well. The 2 parcels to the south are zoned agricultural. And to the north, there is agricultural zoning, although all of that property is contained in the right-of-way for Cherry Blossom Way. And so it's almost, I would say you could just disregard that agricultural zoning there. If you could go to the next slide. The project site, as you can see, is laid out here on the site plan. There's a fueling area proposed here with several fueling stations for vehicles. My understanding is that this fueling station will be open to the general public. It won't be restricted for simply large vehicles or anything like that. To the north of the fueling station and canopy is the area where the compression tanks and the process of compressing and drying the natural gas will take place. There's a underground Columbia gas line that will service that area. Additionally, for safety, there's a pad located away from the compression area where manual shutdown of the facility can take place. The applicant is showing that as here's Cherry Blossom Way Spur here. Cherry Blossom Way would be further to the north. Vehicles would enter from this western side and drive one way through and then exit on the eastern side. I don't have any problems with the proposed circulation. The applicant is requesting a waiver to not install a sidewalk along the northern property line here along the road. There's currently no sidewalks in the area over there, and there's not a lot of pedestrian accessible or pedestrian friendly businesses along the street. However, to the west, a Subway restaurant did receive preliminary approval, and it did show sidewalks. However, I think that was in 2012, and no final development plan has been received for that. So it seems as unlikely that plan is going to be enacted. As far as landscaping for the project, the VUA perimeter is all showing screening consistent with the landscape ordinance. We would request that the applicant move the shrubs shown on the east and west side up closer to the VUA area so that they're more on top of the hill as the land falls away from the developed area shown here. But the number of trees and the size and quantity of hedges all meet with the landscape ordinance. The applicant is showing that they are proposing to preserve an existing tree and shrub line along the southern property line. Some of the trees in this area are contained on the subject property on the project site, and some are off the project site on the agricultural land to the south. But the number of trees is sufficient with our landscape ordinance. The applicant is also showing a 6-foot hedge here that would just bring the site into further compliance with the landscape ordinance. Let's see. They are showing a drainage and detention area here to the south. Yeah, if you could go to the next one. This is just a little bit more zoomed in, just to get a slightly better idea of some of the safety features, which some of the safety features were contained in a packet that was included in the staff report. But just to highlight a couple of additional safety features, they are showing bollards, concrete-filled bollards on either side of the pump stations, as well as spaced a minimum of 4 feet apart around the storage tank area and compression area for the natural gas, providing safety in the event that a vehicle was to veer off of the drivable area. Continuing on, if you could go to the next one. They are not proposing any parking spaces on this site. This site is proposed to be not have a store, so they won't need to provide spaces for employees to park. There's not going to be any attendance on site. It'll be monitored from off site, so they're not proposing any parking spaces. We talked about the direction that the vehicular traffic would go through the site, and the request for a waiver to the sidewalk. You can go to the next one. As far as the landscaping, we talked about a lot of this. In the last bullet point, this body approved or recommended approval of some changes to the landscape ordinance recently, including reduction of interior VUA landscaping, trees, as well as the enactment of canopy standards. As proposed, the project would meet the canopy standards. The only area where it doesn't meet our landscape ordinance would be that the design of the project site doesn't lend itself to landscaped islands or peninsulas in the VUA area, so they have not included those. I've recommended that they request a waiver to those interior landscape islands. I've also recommended that they request a waiver to move the trees that would have gone to those islands elsewhere on the site, as there is plenty of open space on the project site that those trees could be accommodated. So if you could go to the next slide. I'm recommending approval of this project with the 3 waivers shown here and included in the staff report. All the conditions, and there's some on the next slide as well, that I'm recommending for this application or be attached to your potential approval are very standard with projects, with development plans, including making sure we get grading permits, submitting photometric plans and things of that nature.
That the fire department and emergency personnel all are in total agreement with this.
The fire department was present at our TRC meeting, and they didn't have any problems or concerns that they voiced at that time. They will have to sign off on the final development plan. And I did reach out to Jack Donovan, as we discussed at workshop, and his office has no problems with the project site either.
I guess I got one question, Matt. As far
Yes.
as the sidewalk requirements,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like every time somebody wants to build on Cherry Blossom, they're asking for a waiver of the sidewalks. Yet you still see more and more people walking on Cherry Blossom. It seems like we keep waiving the sidewalks. What's going to happen one of these days when we have to have sidewalks? Who's going to be required to put those in?
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with that sentiment. This project wouldn't necessarily put a sidewalk on Cherry Blossom itself, since it's located off of a spur road. But I mean, I do.
But it could connect to a sidewalk at some point.
Connect a sidewalk on this segment could connect to a future sidewalk on Cherry Blossom. Yes, and who knows? There's not any pedestrian, what I call pedestrian-friendly businesses along or development along this road now, but there could be in the future.
Just would that put that back on the county or the city to have to provide those sidewalks later at a later time?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't ask the applicant to provide sidewalks now, it would then either fall on the city, the county, or potentially seeking out grant funding to install those.
Okay. Any more questions for Matt?
Do you know what type of vehicles would mostly be going in there to fill? Would it be these car haulers or tractor trailers, or would it be smaller?
That I'm not sure. It was indicated to us that there may be some some fleets might be switching their vehicles over to compressed natural gas fuel, and that we may see more of these stations along the interstate corridor moving forward. I mean, certainly there are some compressed natural gas vehicles, in use in the county already.
Didn't they just build one right across the road and drop back in?
I think that one is a liquefied natural gas.
Liquefied natural gas.
Yeah.
Okay, it's rather than compressed natural gas.
Mhm.
Any more questions for Matt? Is the applicant present?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Rob Jess. I'm the Vice President of Site Development at American Natural Gas, and we're based at 125 High Rock Avenue in Saratoga Springs, New York, also horse country. And I really appreciate the way the county works in terms of presenting the application and going through all the details. It makes my job very easy. I guess you can hit me with a bunch of questions, or I can kind of dive into a little bit more detail
Do you have,
and answer some questions.
do you have any response to what Mr. Smith just asked?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of vehicles, it's designed for the largest vehicles, the WB67 tractor trailer, very similar to what you would see at the pilot truck stop. It is open to the public, so any type of vehicle that would want to fuel there, we'd want to accommodate them. Really what these stations, and I'll comment about the station across the street that's closed, and excuse me, that is a different type of product at that location. That's liquefied natural gas, which is still natural gas, but it's a totally different type of fueling experience. Things really seem to be, for the fleets, really kind of turning towards compressed natural gas, and that's why we're in this business. And the reason for that change is vehicles, the size of the tanks have gotten larger, which gives the vehicles a longer range, which is now making compressed natural gas a little bit more in favor. It's a little bit more user-friendly, easier to fuel. You don't have a lot of the issues or different things you have to deal with in terms of liquefied natural gas. The reason we're building a station here is, in terms of our business model, we're a company, we develop, own, and operate compressed natural gas fueling stations. And we build these, we don't just build them speculatively. That would be probably not a good investment. We work, our primary audience is fleets. And we already have a signed contract, I can't disclose with who, that's gonna commit to purchase a certain fuel load. So that enables us to build a station here, serve them. And we did a lot of searching in the market, and as you could expect, with all the truck traffic and all the vehicles in that area, it's a really a good location for that. Did I answer your questions?
That answered my question, but I'm still trying to envision that is a fairly tight turn going down that. I know.
In terms of the tractor trailers coming in.
And Clark's
Yeah, I've
Colorado.
watched, when I was there, I saw tractor trailers actually parked in at the
There
Waffle
are
House.
some in and out
Yep.
there, yes.
Mr. Moran, do you have some?
Yeah, Rob, this type of station, will there be someone on site in case of a accident or accidental spill?
Yeah, this isn't, which is very common, is pretty much the industry standard. This is an unmanned station. It's open 24/7. We monitor it remotely. We have security cameras. There's emergency shut-off devices. People can contact us immediately. We can resolve problems. But no, that's industry standard. Typically is an unmanned station. There's really, when you say refer to a spill, that's one of the advantages of compressed natural gas is you have no tanks buried. You have no, if there was a leak, it would dissipate into the environment. And obviously you have to address that, but there's over 2,000 CNG stations across the country, and more are being built. They provide a cleaner burning alternative to gasoline and diesel. One of the advantages too is they're quieter.
So there is no storage, it's compressed as it goes into the vehicle? Is that the idea?
Yeah, what I could do is it possible to switch back to that one large site plan? And it can, as part of the application package too, there's a description, there's a project description, as part of the record, as well as a description of the safety features too. So the board does have that. But if you start at the equipment pad, which is in the middle of the drawing there. Oh, I have it up here. Perfect. Laser working? Does it turn on? Is it there?
That's a whopper.
Okay, so here's the equipment pad, okay? So what you have is you have a gas line that comes in, and you have a dryer in that first device. And what the dryer is it's basically a vessel that's filled with a product that's very similar to kitty litter. So the fuel that comes in, natural gas can be wet, and it absorbs the moisture and removes impurities. It's referred to as a dryer. I mean, it does dry the gas, it removes it. But there's also a regeneration process where you basically heat up it's a desiccant that's in that dryer. You heat that up, get it to evaporate, and then you collect it. So you regenerate it, you reuse it. It's sort of like a water softener in a sense. So that's the first piece of equipment. So the gas will come through the dryer and be cleaned and dry. And then it goes into, we have two compressors here, and they take the natural gas and they compress it. And the compressed gas goes into, there's storage vessels right here. Those are long cylindrical tubes. They're designed by, or approved by the Association Society of Mechanical Engineers. They're designed for CNG. They're like 1.5 inch thick wall. They're specifically designed for compressed natural gas. Compressed natural gas, it gets compressed to a pressure of about 4,500 pounds per square inch. And the whole reason you're going through this compression process is to put the fuel into a manageable volume. If you didn't compress it, the gas tanks or the fuel tanks would just be enormous. So you have to compress it to make it more energy dense.
Is it liquefied or still gas?
No, it's still gas. That's the big difference. Versus LNG is super cooled to minus 270 degrees Fahrenheit. And what you see in the station across the street is more or less like a big thermos. Keeps it cold. So this takes line gas, goes to the dryer, goes to the compressors, and it goes into the storage vessels. And the way a vehicle fueling works with a compressed natural gas station, it just works based on pressure differential. So if a vehicle comes in essentially empty, they don't come in empty because they wouldn't make it. But if they were at 100 pounds per square inch in their tank, you got the higher pressure in the storage vessels and it starts filling it. And once there's like 3 tanks, once the low tank and the gas tank or the fuel tank reach equilibrium, it stops filling off that low tank, jumps up to the next tank, and it fills, it keeps boosting the pressure, and then the third tank essentially tops it off. So it's flowing by pressure differential. You can also, if those storage vessels get depleted in the fueling process, if you had multiple vehicles pull up, the compressor would also directly fill a vehicle. So the storage vessels they're not intended to store large volumes of natural gas. The intention is to help kind of throttle so the compressors are not turning on and off. And kind of the analogy I use is like with a well pump, with a hydropneumatic tank. You have a tank size, so the pump doesn't turn on and off every time you turn the faucet on. So it's the same kind of concept. And it also, the vessels allow the gas to cool, because you want it to cool because it hasn't expanded. Gas coming out of the compressor is hot, and you don't get as good a fill in the gas tank.
Thank you.
Sorry. So you've got the storage vessels there, and then you've got the 3 dispensers. The nozzles on the dispenser are very similar. It's a compression connection, very similar to what you'd have on like an air gun. Snap it onto the vehicle. Pressure equalizes. Turn the pump on. And it fuels. When it reaches the full level, it shuts off. Turn it off. Get your receipt. Pay with credit cards, MasterCard, Visa, Discover, so anybody can use it.
So you guys buy the gas from Columbia Gas,
Yeah.
I guess?
Yeah, one of the nice things about this site is they have a high-pressure gas main right by the site. And they're providing about 225 pounds per square inch to start out. So the higher the pressure you can start out with, the better, the less compression you have to do.
Okay.
And then that pad off to the right there that Mr. Summers was referring to is, that's a motor control center. That's kind of the electronics. It's the brains, tells it what to do, which compressors to turn on and when. So that's primarily the disconnect switch for the electrical service. There is a canopy over top of this. It's a specially designed canopy. It's a CNG canopy, which means it's V-shaped. You know, the whole concern with natural gases is not allowed to collect in a confined space. If you're not collecting in a confined space, you don't have that explosion hazard. So with a V shape, if anything were to leak out, it would again dissipate to the environment. There is no sprinkler system for the canopy system. This is all designed per NFPA 52, which is the Bible for designing. That's what the fire department is surely looking at, plus what other codes they have. Sorry, I'm having a hard time talking here. I started my day at 3:30 and I'm running out of steam here, so I flew in from New York. So there is no sprinkler system. NFPA 52 requires a fire extinguisher. So the canopy will have a LED price sign on it, and we're also proposing a freestanding sign out by the entrance in.
As far as a accident or anything like that, hopefully nothing happens. What could happen is like an explosion.
I mean, if you do the research and do the literature, I mean, you're not finding that it's happening. These have a great track record. Vehicles have a great track record too. For example, up in New York State, which is where I'm from, we're based, DOT has had these systems in place for 20 years, they have vehicles. I mean, if you do the research, much better safety record than, say, a gasoline station. You get a spill and you get liquid all over the ground. If there happened to be some leak and it caught fire, you turn the gas off. There's really no place for it to collect, and there's pressure relief valves, and we monitor all that. So if there's some anomaly in the system when it's running, we know. And we'll have a partner that we work with that will be doing routine maintenance. So it's not like we just build it and we're gone. You know, there's other machines that require oil to be changed, routine maintenance. So there's very routine follow-up. We want to make sure it's working flawlessly too. I mean, the whole goal is to have a very good fueling experience. So we've got customers that want to come back.
Do UPS or FedEx use compressed natural gas now?
They are, some of them, yeah, they're converting. I think UPS actually was using LNG. So there's different philosophies on how to do it. We're finishing a station right now for a supermarket chain in Western New York where they're converting all 55 of their trucks to run on compressed natural gas. I mean, so and that's what it's all about is making sure people are kind of on the bubble. They want to make sure they have a place to fuel. You know, it's like, well, where do I go to fuel? You don't want to run out of gas. And so really, our company's all about expanding that infrastructure and network. It's much more developed on the West Coast and further in the Midwest. And so, but there's a lot of interest.
No, that area where this is proposed to be at times gets very congested. Do we have any kind of idea, and Joe, maybe you can help on this, what kind of traffic impact that may have in that area there? That
I don't have any numbers for you. There's a lot of truck traffic associated with Toyota. There's a multimodal station there. There's the pilot truck stop on both sides, so there's a lot of truck traffic. I don't have traffic count, but there is a lot of undeveloped area around.
You did mention
that spur has a lot of traffic.
you've got a contractor, you're looking at a contract with an unnamed company. What expectations of volume of trucks or vehicles do they currently
If you
have?
look at, and that's a good question. I mean, the reason we're excited here too is we're really looking to capture bypass traffic, not generate new trips. The people we want to serve, we want it to be on their regular routes, not have to divert and drive. So if you think about it, And the reason we're right there at the interchange and all the trucks, I mean, yes, there'll be more vehicles that would be going down that road, but we don't see it as new trips being generated. If anything, if somebody's looking for natural gas and it's not at an exit like we are, you know, then they're gonna have to start chasing it off-site and start looking for it. But we really feel that it's primarily pass-by traffic. You could look at a station, roughly, if this were to sell 500,000 gallons a year, and you do the math, it's open 365 days a year, and you look at how much a tractor trailer fills, you know, you could be looking at, it may sound like a low number, 25 to 30 trips in, 25 to 30 trips out. It makes it work. I mean, it can function based on that. And if the traffic volumes start to get that much larger, you start exceeding and getting into, you know, really large volumes, you build another station. Because if customers, you know, if we felt like customers had a hard time getting in there, it didn't work well, I mean, we're cutting our nose out to spite our face. I mean, access is critical.
I think the one thing that would need to happen there is, I think the state will need to come back and relook at that intersection. As it stands right now, there's no turn arrow where you were accessing. There is a turn arrow on Cherry Blossom to go into the truck stop. But all the traffic has been on the opposite side of the road at this point. There's very little traffic on that side. Sometimes I've sat in that light 2 or 3 times before I can get out of there and turn left.
Now there's been some initial coordination with DOT because that road is their jurisdiction. We did get some preliminary feedback. Do you remember seeing it? We just essentially, I don't have it in front of you, but you know, the concept, it looked kind of in general what they would expect, but they're still going to have an opportunity to take a look at it. We have to get a permit from them. So.
Which road did you say was in their jurisdiction?
Cherry Blossom.
Cherry Blossom.
Yeah.
But what about the spur?
That's Troutport.
It's in the right of way.
So it's under the state?
Yeah.
Okay. That's gonna be my next question. What's the road like out there?
Need some improvements.
Need some improvements, or
Yeah.
what's going on with the road out there?
I've got one more question. I'm looking at your overview, page 2 of 4, under Safety General. It mentions operated in accordance with all applicable federal, state, and local codes. And then it goes on to say, including all applicable referenced codes, New York State Fuel Gas Code and New York State Mechanical Code. Does state of Kentucky have a fuel gas code and a mechanical code, Joe?
That was a mistake.
Oh, that was a mistake?
Yeah, on my part, I read it when I read through it again, and because it's, you know, we present this, it's
Right, I understand.
It's similar, but no,
So
the intention is.
it is applicable
Yes.
and within code of Kentucky?
Yes.
All right.
In regards to the traffic, though, would it not be fair to say that the traffic? I can't see the traffic would increase. It's just that more tractor trailer owners, drivers have gotten smarter, trying to help us all out using your product versus going over to the pilots. That's the way I would see it. It's not like he's adding any vehicles, he's just getting people to do the smart environmental good thing to do, to change their vehicles to a better source. And we need a choice. We're strangled by the oil companies, we all know that. We need a choice. And don't we have a whole lot more natural gas in this country than we can use?
Now we're
We
shipping
should
it
be
overseas.
using more. I'm trying to help you out here.
I know. That's where liquefied natural gas comes into play, when they ship it over,
Yeah.
put on a boat.
Any more questions for the applicant? Any more discussion at all?
I'm curious, are there any car companies talking about using compressed natural gas in their vehicles, or I mean, can you buy that stock off of line? Or?
Oh yeah, we've got, I mean, we have a Honda Civic that runs on CNG, although they just recently discontinued it. The thing is it makes a lot of sense for vehicles that burn a lot of gas and diesel. because there is an upgrade charge if you were to buy I won't mention any car names again, but there's an increase in price. It's a more expensive vehicle. And a vehicle that already gets really good gas mileage, the payback period is, well, I mean, we have, tractor trailer fleets are just a good candidate. Vehicles that get 5 miles per gallon, they're all over it.
Yeah, I've
They
heard
have,
this
especially
one.
supermarkets, they have to compete, and it's a way to lower the cost, and it sends a good message too.
Yeah. I've heard that the car haulers, the people who can haul these cars from Toyota really love it because of the emissions, they don't get all the smoke off.
Oh, you're talking about the actual car
Well,
haulers
well,
themselves?
both ways, whether it's a small vehicle or tractor trailer,
Yeah.
or mid-sized delivery truck.
I think you can buy a Chevy Impala, I think you can get dual, or, we have pickup truck I get them mixed up. It's bi-fuel. It runs on CNG, and then if you can't find a CNG station, it runs out, it switches over to gas. Same engine. They're out there.
Any more questions, comments? Discussion? Not?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, when there's somebody that had their hand up a moment ago to speak.
Can
One
I
more.
mention one more
Yes, sir.
thing? And I forgot, I didn't mean to overlook it. In terms of the property, there's an existing access easement along the western boundary. It's a 14-foot wide easement. Serves the property in the back, 16 acres. And the owner is here, one of the owner representatives, and they've reached out to us. They're looking to see if there's a way to enhance that access for their use, and I believe, I don't want to speak for them, I believe they're going to talk about it. What I wanted to say is we're open to having a discussion with them about it, but it's really hard for me at this juncture I can't make any commitments that we're going to be able to make that better than what is today, but I will say we will talk with them and see if there's an opportunity. We're on a very aggressive construction schedule. We have a contract, as I mentioned. We have to meet dates, or else we're going to be in violation of our contract. So I just wanted to mention that to the board. We, if we can work something that can work for us, we're willing to have that conversation with them.
You got any comment on that, Matt?
I don't particularly have any. I just talked about it briefly with Roy as well, and the gentleman with him. I mean, that passway easement is, filed at the courthouse, the deed and book number on the plat.
We bought the property knowing that there was a 14-foot easement there, and we preserved it. We haven't interfered with that, but
Okay.
I think you'll hear maybe there's some desire to enhance that, and just want to let the board know that we're willing to have the conversation with him, but at this point, it's hard to change horses midstream and without hurting themselves.
Okay. Thank you. Charlie, anybody here to speak? I guess you need to swear them in first, Charlie. We ain't never done that tonight, have we?
Boy, we haven't, have we? Including you, sir, if everyone who's signed in to speak and still is here, would you stand and raise your right hand, please? And do you swear or affirm the statements that you're going to make or the ones you've already made are the truth to the best of your information and belief?
Yes.
Thank you all. Now, I don't have everyone's notation as to what application they're here on, so I'll just ask. Is there anyone signed in to speak to this application besides obviously the applicant? Yes, ma'am. If so, I have the chair. Ms.
Yep,
Sharp, you go.
Come up, please.
Do any of you know where I live?
State your name and.
Carleen Sharp. Not for you, Steve. You know. Do any of you know where I live?
I think I do. Down at the end of this.
Do you know where I live?
I have to look at the map, but
I have to pass the Motel 6, all that traffic, the Waffle House, probably the subway whenever it comes, Teddy Clark's traffic, and now this. I'd be going and dealing with that traffic every day, every time I go in and out. And dealing with semis, I go out to the stoplight. Time they get under the light and get around to their turn, then it's already turned again and I'm still sitting there. I deal with that every day. Sometimes when I get up to go to work, I get up close to the Waffle House and there's 2 trucks double parked. I can't get out. I have to go hunt up a truck driver at the motel, get him to move his truck so I can get out and go to work. That's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought there's signs out there, Joe. There's no signage out there?
They back over them. I think they do it on purpose.
I thought we went over that before, that there's
Yeah,
supposed to
we
be
did.
signs out there.
They back over
We
them,
did with
knock them down.
George's.
Yeah.
I'm opposed to this. The traffic is awful now that I deal with. It's the motel people, they walk their dogs, they come down to my yard. I don't have a dog, but they're not watching their dog messes in my yard, they flip their cigarette butts in my yard. They get done talking on their phone, then they walk back up the road. That's almost every night occurrence when the weather's nice. It's just not only just that kind of traffic, but just the cars. People get turned around when they come out of the Waffle House. They come down with a trailer on the back of their vehicle. They don't know how to back it up, so they have to unhook it, turn around, pull the little trailer around, hook back up to get out. Semis come down there. They think they're getting over to the train depot. Once you get around that curve, they can't back up in the night. It's on their blind side. And there's just one just this past week come down around the curve and left a great big deep rut about like that where he got stuck.
Charlie, how can we address her concerns? Where can we point her, or who needs to get involved in this?
Well, unfortunately, I guess there are 2 things. One is it's a state issue to improve the spur that they should have improved years ago. And it's also an enforcement issue, which is police, state or local. Obviously, we can contact them and make, as Rob was talking earlier, we need to do some talking on a number of issues around the county. But we can't do anything to the spur, that's state, and we really can't make them go out and enforce. So basically what we can do is we can enforce our own regulations, which apparently have been met, but we really can't enforce theirs. We can certainly contact them, encourage them, maybe even raise a little cane, but that's the limit of our authority.
If this generates just a little more traffic, you might get your turn arrow over there at that light and not have to sit through 2 or 3 lights to get out of there. I don't know. I've sat there myself several times.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough traffic coming out the opposite side of Traport, you just can't get out.
And you get 2, 3 semis, they're fueling up. It's going to be loud. You get 2, 3 stacked up, waiting to get in to get fueled up. That's something else I have to deal with.
How far is this from your home?
500 feet.
500?
Yeah. Pretty close. How tall is your sign going to be at the entrance?
We had proposed a sign that was zone compliant, just 25 feet tall.
All lit up, I guess.
Can we move up to the microphone, direct your questions up here,
sorry.
please?
Yeah, we were proposing a 25-foot tall sign to be in compliance with zoning, internally illuminated.
Ms. Sharp, you have any more questions for that?
Just a lot of traffic, and I am against this particular business, the type of business, the semis and stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not for that.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the applicant, I have one more question. So if that's a spur road, the state has control, do you have to have state permits to
Yeah,
access the road?
It's my understanding
Have you went through that process yet?
we're getting ready to start after we had worked, ideally with the board's approval, and start that process. We started, the plan went to them, they looked at it, and they came back, and they commented on I believe on a cursory level. We didn't see any red flags, but I can't say that they didn't dive into it. I just saw an email that they didn't see anything that jumped out at them, but.
I just wonder, since he hadn't been to the state yet, is that some way we can put pressure on the state to help him do some improvements on this road?
No.
To be able to approve this?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't say you can't. And I'm sure there have probably been some episodes where some of that kind of pressure was helpful. I haven't been personally involved where it's ever been helpful. And in fact, many times through the years, we've gotten the response of that until the numbers get up, we don't make the changes. You know, we don't add lights until the numbers are up, which actually means you've got to have problematic numbers before they will make the road changes. Again, doesn't mean that, especially in conjunction with his application going there, that we shouldn't contact him. And in fact, staff probably should. But that, I mean, that just, in my limited experience, that hasn't always been real helpful. I mean, not that they don't listen, but they have standards. And literally, you've got to have so much volume before they move to the next level. So this may be it, and this may not. And I'm sure they'd listen, but if they hadn't met that standard, I'll bet you they wouldn't do much.
So should his approval through the state be a sort of a condition of approval for us?
Well, you can certainly put that on. It's virtually irrelevant because without state approval, he can't do anything. So we can say that, but that's true whether we say it or not. I mean, that's just like saying, you know, we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff on an entrance onto a state road. Well, we might as well not say anything because it's going to have to be approved by them.
Well, we done learned that in the past. We've done learned that in the past. So.
Yeah, that's been the same for years also.
That road is only about 1,000 feet long from where it turns and where it ends at Carlene's. At her home, it's probably not over 1,000 feet, is it?
No.
I mean, it just seems like with this seems like it could be a growing trend with these kind of stations coming up, that maybe we could talk with the state and see if we can't get some road improvement there to say that we need this station here. And this is what we got. Can we get a look at it?
Yeah.
And with or without this, the approval of this application, they do need some better signage there
That you can't back over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dead end road, no turnaround. There's no place to turn around back there.
Is there anyone else, Charlie?
I believe this gentleman right here. And your name, sir?
My name is Rodney Piles.
Oh.
I'm the Vice President of the HOA over in Cherry Blossom Townhomes. Concerned about what's going on in Georgetown and the great things that I've been told is going to happen. I think this is a good project, but on the other hand, I haven't seen what the development would look like if it were passed. What would this look like next to Cherry Blossom? And second, what kind of problems are we going to have with the tractor and trailers with the problem that we're now having with the vehicles on Cherry Blossom? We've got a couple of new restaurants, and that's already creating problems, and I'm just afraid we're going to get in a big mess unless something else can be established for our traffic. And thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you.
Anyone else signed up for this application?
Does anyone else have any comments, suggestions, discussion?
I am curious. I wish I knew what kind of traffic count would be generated by this, but it's like you say, I don't guess there's any way to know.
It's probably only going to grow.
I mean, the Bible for traffic generation is the ITE manual. And there's really not a category for this, correct me if I'm wrong, this type of a use. But if you think about it logically, I said, again, we're here grabbing pass-by traffic, diverted trips off of 620. So we don't really feel if you think about it, and you think it through, that we're gonna be generating new traffic. We're gonna be capturing people that are already coming by. A lot of users in that area is really why we're there. So, you know, I can say in good conscience, I don't believe we're gonna be generating new trips.
I think the gentleman there raised a good question about what the looks are gonna be like. How's it gonna look? How's this place gonna look?
The
Do
station?
you have a picture of them?
Yeah, I do have, I brought the thumb drive, it was on the original, the board has, it was the original submission, photographs. One file on there, the last 3 pages. Yep, should only be one on there. I don't think that's pictures of my dog.
No, we're miles away.
I'll let you probably show up.
This is off the pilot right now, it's like a Walmart.
It's a PDF. Oh.
While they're looking for that, just a comical thing.
State your name, Mr.
Roy
Cornett.
Teddy Clark, who's next to this, swears that the state and the county, neither one claim that road. When it comes to snow removal, it's left up to him. Now, Brett and I have been laughing about it, and J.R. Brandenburg swears it's not the county's, that it is in fact the state.
That's where I was at. Who
And
owns the
I think
road?
it's gotta be the state, but I just thought it's kinda interesting. Nobody wants to claim that road, and there's just one.
Somebody's gonna have to claim it if this comes.
My understanding, it's in the state right away. That's my understanding. This is a perspective, a rendering of what a station looks like. Very similar, we put something together for this site. It's slightly different with the components. Got your canopy, I mean, this is very realistic looking. And if you go to the next one, just another view that shows the storage vessels I was talking about, the dryers on the left, the gray thing, and the compressors are 2 larger white.
How noisy are the compressors?
They do generate some noise. There's different noise enclosures you can put on them. It varies. I mean, they do-
So if you're driving down Cherry Blossom,
I mean, in terms of background noise out there with traffic on 620, and I wouldn't expect it to be noticeable.
so you wouldn't be able to hear it if you're driving up Cherry Blossom?
That's me speaking. I mean, just with, I don't have sound information for it, but just the traffic and how busy it is in that area, it's not inconsistent, I don't think, with what's going on out there.
Now, if you were 500 feet away, this lady's yard, having a picnic, would you hear them?
I can't tell you that, I don't know. You have to look at what the intervening terrain is, and
I think Carlene's used to some noise. She lives right next to the railroad tracks, right next to Cherry Blossom. But this might be a little different, I don't know.
Any more discussion?
I would think that'd be pretty important information, people that live in that area, that
Yeah.
the noise would be
Well, the only person.
unbearable, but at least unpleasant.
The only person who lives
Only
there is Ms.
person lives
Sharp.
in that area is
Huh?
that's
The
here.
only person that lives there is Ms. Sharp, so.
Yeah, oh, just one person living.
I
Well,
mean, I
still,
can
she's
tell you
as important
noise
as anybody else, though.
over distance
yeah.
attenuates rapidly. So, I mean, even at 500 feet, I mean, we could do a really rough calculation, but it's gonna be dropping, and you're probably down to 70 decibels, which is background conditions. That's, with traffic, you're easily in that range.
So that wouldn't affect the motels either then?
It's a commercially zoned area.
Yeah.
I don't know what the town's ordinances or the county's ordinances are relative to that, but we're trying to find a site where this fits in, and we understand it complies with zoning. It's a commercial area, so there are some impacts that come with a commercial zoning.
So it's considered commercial, not industrial type
Yeah, this is a commercial
application?
allowing B2 commercial.
Okay.
Two zone.
Matt?
Mr. Chair, I would also add, I mean, there is, proposed landscape, there is also proposed landscaping around the site. Now, while that will not eliminate any off-site noise impacts, it will help to deaden some of the sound as it travels, particularly to the south, with trees spaced one every 40 feet, and the 6-foot hedge that's shown on the site plan. I mean, things like that will help mitigate some of the sound impacts to the south.
On the condition, on the way variance there, Matt, number 3, the location of the interior landscape tree, are we trying to get rid of those altogether, or is he gonna put them somewhere else?
My preference would be that those, rather than be located in islands in the VUA, be moved elsewhere on the site, probably in that area to the south of the
I'd like to see
filling
them move
station.
toward Miss Sharp's, so it kind
South
of
and west.
block
South
her
and east.
view of it, maybe.
South
I
and
mean,
east.
it's just going to kind of depend on some of the feasibility issues. As long as it works with the stormwater drainage, I wouldn't have any problem with that. Yeah.
Speaking of the landscaping issue, I apologize for bringing something new up. On the plan, there's the shrub line along the back. And we would like to ask that we not have to install that at this time. It's heavily vegetated. We literally have to remove vegetation to put those shrubs in, kind of in the same token with the trees. We're not trying to not have the obligation to put it in when the time comes, if those trees were to get cut down, that natural buffer, or the trees died. It's just, we're talking about putting shrubs down at the bottom of a hill right next to a row of trees that really, from a screening perspective, aren't really doing anything. And I'm concerned about them dying. They're on the north side, they'd be in the shade of the trees. So I'm just asking that we not be obligated to install them now, but we have no problem if in the future those trees come down and there's supposed to be a buffer there, we'll put those in.
Staff, Matt, you have a comment on that?
I mean, as far as that's concerned, I've looked at that. There is a good amount of shrubbery, if you will, in that area with that tree line. I wouldn't be opposed. However, I would maybe even add that if there are complaints from the neighbors to the south of noise or some sort of other off-site impact like that, that maybe those shrubs be installed then as well.
That's what I was wondering, if we could put more down toward Miss Sharp's to, what's wrong with the rain?
You're in trouble, Frank.
If we could move some of those trees or shrubs down toward Miss Sharp's to try to block her view of the station, try to give her a little bit of something anyway. If it's approved, could we put that in the conditions of approval?
Yeah, I think as much as block the view, block the noise.
Yeah, anything will help,
Need to be careful. Teddy Clark probably not gonna appreciate being cut off.
Yeah. He's right next to it, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think his big concern is being cut off by the trees that grow up between himself and cherry blossom. He has to keep them all cleaned up.
I don't know for sure, but I think some beavers have been contracted to cut those trees in the past out there, and I'm sure he probably had the same sentiment about some more shrubs going out there blocking his view between him and the A&Z, just, yeah, please.
Well, any more discussion, questions, comments? If not, we need to, motion to approve, disapprove.
Mr. Wise would have to step back.
But
Step out.
I
Mr.
did have
Wiseman,
one other-
step out for a second.
I had one other question. This is a 3.3 acre lot. Is the plan to keep most of it mowed? I mean, commercial contractor keep that mowed, or is
Yeah,
it
we'll
gonna-
keep it mowed up around where the improved areas are, but like in the back, it's kind of natural and wild. We just,
Let it go
it's
natural.
down off the slope. Yeah, we wouldn't wanna just leave that natural. But up where the landscaping is, and that's the proposal.
Which would be better. It's pretty wild back there now.
They've got the singer.
Is that in city limits or outside city limits? Is this in the city limits or
It's in the
outside?
city limits, I believe.
I think it actually is outside of city limits.
Pretty close there to.
Yeah, it's pretty close, but I think it is outside.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep. Any more questions? For the record, Mr. Wiseman did have to step out for a second, so. If there's no more discussion, we need to move on a motion.
Mr. Chairman, though I do have some concerns about the traffic, and I hate for Carleen to have to experience more traffic in and out of there, I don't think the area could be any better as far as proximity to trucks, unless this thing was to be located across the road, maybe near the LNG plant. I don't know if there's a spot over there, or has that been looked at?
They would be considered a competitor.
All right, so you'd
We
rather
bought-
not be near them?
We own this property.
I see. I think this is probably this might be the future of fuel, and I can't see that there's a downside as far as the environmental side of that is probably a good thing. I do have concerns about getting in and out of there. I hope that the state will be attentive and cooperative when if this does generate very much traffic. There's not much place to stack vehicles up there as they're making that turn. I would.
Are you going to?
I'd move approval.
Stephen, we have 3 variances there also.
Yeah.
That we need to look at.
Sidewalk requirement.
You want to put those variances in with your motion of approval, or?
See, the interior landscape trees, you say that, Matt, you would be willing to work with them on these interior landscape trees to maybe reallocate them in
Yeah,
other
I
areas?
mean, if you grant the waiver, we can work with them on the placement, on the final development plan.
That sounds good. All right, well, I would move approval with the three variances.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Solsky, with three variances. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion approved.
Thank you very much.
All right, you need to
Yeah,
sign.
thank you.
Paper, please.
Have a safe flight home.
Couldn't tell he was from
He's
over there.
asleep.
Yes, he is.
He said he come from Horse Country. He's in Horse
Oh,
Country.
yeah, they ain't on horse country up there. Where's mine? Next order of business is the, y'all want to take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Let's take a 5-minute break real quick.
How do you?
we'll get started on the next application.
Get out of here to reasonable time.
Next application is Golf Townhomes of Cherry Blossom.
Now we have to figure out somebody.
All right, this is
Hey,
the
Joe.
golf.
Mr. Moran.
I have to recuse myself from this one.
Mr. Moran's recusing himself for the record.
All right, this is the golf homes of townhomes of Cherry Blossom Phase 5. It's a preliminary development plan and preliminary subdivision plat for 29 single-family duplex lots and townhome units in the Cherry Blossom multifamily area. It's zoned R2 PUD. This area was rezoned in the late 90s. When the Cherry Blossom community was originally approved, it included a single-family area zoned R1C PUD that was approved for 550 lots, and it included this multifamily area to the south that was approved originally for 450 units, zoned R2 PUD. So there's two different zonings out of Cherry Blossom. We're talking about the R2 PUD area. It's been developed in multiple phases over time. The first phase was a townhome development on private streets. It included, I think, 29 townhome units in triplex townhomes, so attached townhomes on private streets on a private access easement. Phase 2 were these townhomes on Riviera Drive on the west side of Riviera. Phase 3 was on the other side of the road, and at that point they switched from attached townhomes to single-family lots, but they asked for approval of single-family and attached duplex units. So either single-family or with 7.5-foot side setbacks, or an attached unit with 7.5 setbacks on the outer edge and a shared common wall in the center, so essentially duplex units, but that could be sold separately. Phase 4 was a continuation of Ikebana, and Ikebana is meant to eventually connect to the commercial area of the Howard property. Ikebana Phase 4 extended and turned the corner and included an access easement and turnaround that's within this Phase 5 section. This was the master plan with the Phase 4 development. We asked for a master plan to be submitted for your approval. This was the master plan for the multifamily area that was submitted. Much lower density than was approved in this area. I think it was around 140 lots or so for. The plan was triplex townhomes along the golf course, and then the remainder of the lots either be single family or duplex townhomes depending on the market, with a connection to Old Oxford here on the east side. They didn't provide a direct connection through at Ikebana here, but it was a kind of circuitous network of roads. They did also provide some road reservation for potential connection of a collector road between Old Oxford and Cherry Blossom. So Phase 4 ended about here. They were asked to continue the road with a turnaround since our sub-regs require a turnaround every 150 feet from an intersection, so they provided that with the last phase. Now they're going ahead and asking for approval of Phase 5, which will run essentially here, include these townhome lots, triplex townhomes, and then these single-family / duplex lots. There are a couple issues with the plan that we want to kind of address, and we've addressed in our recommendations. One is these three lots. There's existing tree line. There's multiple easements, and there's also an existing drainage easement and drainage structures here. With the multiple easements and all that's happening on these lots, we'd like to see the building footprints on the final development plan, or the final subdivision plat, so that we can determine if those are buildable without negatively impacting or removing the entire tree line here and impacting kind of the existing townhome development that's in place. It looks like there's buildable area, but we wanted to make sure that we could evaluate that and know exactly how these lots will be used. There's possibility that they might have to be consolidated, although they are larger than the other lots in the phase, and most likely are buildable. This one really is probably the most problematic, but it'll be difficult to kind of squeeze a unit in here with the combination of the setbacks, and it being a double frontage lot. So we want to be sure that those are usable. The other issue is with the previous sections, the single-family duplex lots maintained a minimum 50-foot width and 5,000 square foot minimum lot area. Although that wasn't a specific condition of approval, that was kind of the minimum width. And once you get below 50 feet, if they're not attached units, it's difficult to get the type of unit that's in the earlier sections and still meet that 7.5 foot side setback. It may be possible to get an attached unit on these narrower lots if they share the lot line, but we're concerned with the development maintaining the same character throughout. If you start trying to squeeze a different type of unit, a narrower kind of single-family more of a shotgun type unit with two front-facing garages on these narrow lots, it may change the character of the area. So we're asking for the development to maintain that minimum 50-foot width for these single-family lots and the 5,000 square foot area. Other than that, it meets the R2 density requirements that are established within our zoning ordinance. This area overall is much lower in density than what it's approved for. I think these lots, as shown, follow the concept plan that was approved. So I think generally we don't have any major concerns with the development as shown, and it continuing to follow the concept plan as approved. The applicant is asking for 4 variances, and those variances really, this is a R2 PUD development, so planned unit developments allow some variance from the standard underlying R2 requirements, since R2 zoning does allow for the whole gamut of housing from single family, 7,500 square foot minimum lot size, up to multifamily 12 units an acre. So if you do single family in R2, as a PUD, you're typically allowed to go smaller than the standard lot size if you maintain the overall density. So they are asking for the 3 variances that were in your staff report, and the 1 additional variance that I'll mention in a second. But the variances or the waivers from the standard R2 requirements that they're asking for is a reduction of the front setback from 30 feet, which is standard R2 front setback, to 20 feet. And the reasoning is that this is more of a kind of a high density urban type of single mixed use area. So they're looking for a product that's built closer to the street. There will be sidewalks on both sides of the street, but the previous phases were approved for a 20-foot front setback, so we are recommending that continue. The reduction, the other two waivers that I mentioned are, although they weren't called out in the previous phases, will follow what was approved previously, and that's a reduction in the lot width, but keeping it to a minimum of 50 foot wide, and a reduction of the lot area to a minimum of 5,000 square foot in area per lot, per single family lot. And that's those conditions are meant to apply to these single family / duplex lots. And then there was an additional waiver that was pointed out, and it was in the application site statistics, but I didn't get it in the staff report. And that's these townhome units. We do have a minimum building area coverage in R2, and that's 40% of a lot area. Lot area can be covered in building a maximum of 40%. These middle townhome units, because they don't have the 7.5 sides, do exceed that 40%, and they're asking for a variance to increase that max lot area coverage to 49%, and that would cover these on these central townhome lots. The other issue that was
would that be just for those units that are in the center of those triplexes?
Yes, that's what we're recommending. Just for those center townhome lots. The other issue that was brought up at workshop and we discussed a little bit is the traffic issue in the area. We talked a lot about that when Phase 4 came through, and when we were discussing the right-of-way or the reservation. There was a Northeast Georgetown traffic study that was done in 2007. It did recommend a long list of short-term and long-term traffic improvements for the area that need to be implemented over time as this area develops, as this Northeast Georgetown area develops in general. They tried to meet, to provide the reservation, the land reservation, so one of those projects could potentially happen, and that would be this collector road, this east-west connection between Cherry Blossom and Old Oxford. So they did provide that as part of this overall. I think as we go forward, I think at some point we need to make sure, we need to push to make sure these projects are implemented, because at some point we're gonna hit up against that wall where congestion becomes so bad in this specific corridor that we can't allow any more development. And I've got some more slides. We can talk about that a little bit more. But with the previous Phase 4 approval, we did ask them to commit, and it was a condition of approval that they make this connection to Old Oxford when they reached 100 lots. So and that comes out of our subregs, and that's something that we'd like to see continue to enforce, that some of these larger developments need multiple ways in and out to diffuse traffic, to allow the traffic to go in different directions, to use different roads, to kind of cut down on that point congestion where you have everybody having to go in one direction to get out and come home, so you get loading on one road. So we've continued that condition through, and that's included with Phase 5 as well, that when they meet that threshold of 100 units, that they make this connection to Old Oxford, and then the improvements along Old Oxford that are part of the original zone change approval. One thing that we didn't really talk about at workshop is a construction entrance, and I didn't really add it as a condition of approval, but it's something you might want to consider. As development kind of gets farther to this backside, we may want to make a condition that they create a construction entrance off Old Oxford, so all the construction traffic doesn't funnel through this kind of circuitous length of road with existing houses on it, that they have a kind of a dedicated construction entrance. And that's something you may want to consider adding to this phase.
The gravel road that is currently Icabana Path going out past, I guess it goes out past Golden Corral, yeah.
Right
Is that,
here.
is that legitimate, that's being, is that a construction entrance, or is somebody just?
Well, it's kind of being used as a construction entrance now, but the city has the money, and they're starting to move forward with paving that road, so that'll be paved soon.
So
I mean, they've got the
you'd
right of
rather-
way, they've got the
rather not
money.
have construction traffic on that, once it's paved, you can bring it in off of Oxford Road to keep the.
I think it would be smarter to have a second construction entrance from the backside, rather than, having to funnel it through here. If maybe they put a construction entrance where the eventual entrance will be to Old Oxford. Just a thought. Others may have a different opinion. But if you have any questions about the Northeast Georgetown traffic study in general, we can talk about that as well. But there were short-term projects and long-term projects. A lot of those projects are on state roads, so they require state funding and kind of coordination with the state to get some of that stuff done. There are kind of two of those that are more local, will be more locally driven. One is this kind of east-west connection, and then improvement of Old Oxford Road in general. Those are two things that the study identified. As this area develops, we really need another east-west connection, whether it be here, east-west connection, not only to Old Oxford, but all the way either to 460 or Newtown Pike. So to get some of that traffic, to be able to, leave and come back in different directions, kind of diffuse some of that traffic. This was meant to allow for potential use of this as a collector road, but there are other opportunities to the north when the interchange goes in and that spur comes over to Cherry Blossom. There's kind of a corridor there between Oxford Road and Old Oxford that needs to be, we need to be working to, purchase the right of way and make sure that there's an opportunity there for a road connection through there, because that'll help a lot of the subdivisions north on Old Oxford Road. And then Old Oxford Road itself needs to be widened and improved and made safer. And that's a city road to the city limits, I guess a county road to Newtown. But that needs to be in a capital improvements plan, or needs to be there needs to be work done to try and bring that project to life, to make it happen. And those are two things we'll be looking at the comp plan update, but they're things we already know have already been identified. And the development along Old Oxford, Cherry Blossoms are required to make the improvements on their side of the road, to county standards. But there are other kind of improvements that aren't funded, and we don't know the timeline or how they're going to be funded, but we need to get commitment to fund that project and get it scheduled, or at least get it moving forward.
Joe, I have a quick question on Old Oxford Road. The city limit, the city-county line, is that almost even with the far border of Cherry Blossom, or is that?
It's a little bit north of that. I think I put a couple other slides in here, just I'll cut it off, but these are annexations. So let's see. I think this is the boundary of the Lanes Run watershed, which is our urban service boundary. So this is the Abbey at Old Oxford, and I think Mintwood Estates. I think there's just a preliminary subdivision approved here, but here's the city limits and the urban service boundary in that area. So it's county from here on, city this way. That's right. Am I looking at the right? Yeah. Yeah, so here's the Cherry Blossom multifamily area. This is I believe that's the annexation for the single family area. Here it is. I go ahead and talk about this briefly since it's in here. These are approved subdivisions in the area and they're build outs. I think it's got the build out, but I think this is, I can't read it if that's Abbey at Old Oxford, but here's a couple, the northern subdivisions. Here's Cherry Blossom. Here's Rocky Creek and Rocky Creek Reserve and Old Oxford. So you can see that there's approved subdivisions, so they're required to make improvements to this side of the road for much of its length, but these are all either established older subdivision 5 acre lots here or farmland. This is Villages of Lanes Run they're only developing right here now, but there's this section that has approved preliminary on this side of the road. So there's much long sections of the road where there's road improvements required when they get to developing in that area or making those connections. So there's some stakeholders there that are required to make investments. So if that money maybe could be combined with some city, maybe county money and state money, maybe there might be opportunities to make this happen sooner rather than later. So we are recommending approval with the 3 variances in your staff report and the 4th variance that are brought up with the townhome, center townhomes, and then the 11 conditions of approval. The first one being that when they reach the connection to Old Oxford Road and the improvements be made contingent or along with the 100th lot being approved. That's all I had.
Any questions for Joe?
You mentioned this construction road coming out. Was that part of your actual recommendation?
I didn't know. I didn't make that condition originally. I thought it might be appropriate. I don't know if it's too far at this point from where these units would be constructed. I thought you might want to get some additional feedback on that.
My only problem with that construction entrance is it could turn into another Icabana where you got the
cut through
residents living there cutting back across to Old Oxford when Old Oxford needs improvements itself.
Yeah,
but it would also keep a lot of.
It will help on the construction, the build out of what's going on, but
if it's,
I don't want to start dumping traffic back out on Old Oxford.
We have one more lot though, at the 100, we're gonna have to do that anyway.
Yeah.
It'll be worse then.
But maybe by that 100th, we can get some planning done, like Joe said, and try to get some
Yeah,
improvements done to Old Oxford before they get to that 100.
But we keep saying, maybe next time, maybe next time, maybe next
Yeah,
time. and we never
I
get
know
there.
we've been talking about it for 2 years, as long as I've been here,
It
and I'm
really
sure
is.
Janet's heard a lot more about it, and we just keep going. We
And
talk about it, we're like real politicians.
And no problem
But we're not,
progress.
but we're not getting anything done, and we just keep letting, you know, more traffic and more traffic build up. I can understand, but, you know, it's not fiscally right to build a road to nowhere, but, I mean, we can see it, we know it. You know, and you know, we've talked about it, but the city's not, I haven't heard that the city is absolutely gonna do anything like you know, right, how long have they had the money? And it's my understanding that they just now are thinking about letting it out, you know, to bid.
What's that, the bottom?
Yeah. That's my concern with it.
And Ichabana has been your construction entrance up until now, because that's a gravel. And once that's paved, then you don't have a construction entrance. That's where you're gonna need I think you need to go and put it in off of Old Oxford, just to keep those heavy trucks off of your paved roads, whether they're rock trucks or concrete trucks.
Some time ago, we were dealing with an issue like this on Riviera, I think, wasn't it, a couple of years ago? And I guess we ended up passing it, but not doing anything about it. We just talked about it.
We said we weren't gonna approve anymore
That's
till
what we
something
said.
was done.
That's what we said then.
I thought I remembered that conversation.
But where does number 100 come in at? Where'd it come from? I thought we wasn't gonna
That's
approve any more, too.
that's the action you took
That's
last time.
That is yeah.
We set it at 100. I don't remember setting it at 100.
No, that's just in general. It's in our ordinances. It has been.
Oh, this second entrance?
Yeah.
No,
Requirement
the
or the
100.
condition on this?
Requirement for the second entrance, when you reach the threshold is 100, is it
100
individual lots or?
multifamily, 100 multifamily units or 200 single-family
Yeah,
units.
okay, thank you.
Any more questions for Joe? The applicant here?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm Rory Cayley, representing Cherry Blossom Townhomes. Short and simple, we're in agreement with Joe's 11 conditions as written and the 4 variances. Request approval. I'll answer any questions.
I know one thing we might have missed, Joe, is that street there, yeah. Where that gate and all that stuff is.
I was waiting for him to come up because I had a question for him.
All right, I'm here.
Shadow Creek.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, my concern on Monday's workshop was that gate. I'm okay with leaving it there during construction, but I don't know what kind of purpose it serves after the construction, because there's no other gate on the other side of the subdivision. So I'd like to see that gate come down after the fact.
Yes, the developer is we talked to him, that's agreeable, keep the construction traffic off of Shadow Path. And then as that comes down, if the townhome residents that are part of the private street section wish to put up some sort of security gate or something along those lines, that would have to be a separate application to this body to do so at that point. At that point, Ichabana is going to be built, it sounds like, by the city, so Ichabana, Riviera, all that will be a public street connection, and then that would be the appropriate time that all of the private streets could be gated at both ends if that's what the neighbors, residents
Because there's
want
no
to
other
do.
gate at another end, is there? At
No.
all?
No.
Joe?
I drove out there, I didn't run into
I
anything.
didn't think so.
With the construction access, what we're looking to do with this plan is to extend a public street less than 1,000 feet. Joe's recent suggestion that the construction traffic would come across land off of Old Oxford would have the developer making an entrance onto Old Oxford and looked like about 3,000 feet of construction road that would have to be constructed just to get us to this site. And contrary to what Mr. Smith was saying, Ichabana out there is on commercial property. That design for that road is to handle the bigger, heavier trucks. So when Ichabana is connected back to the residential Ichabana portion, I mean, that's the public route. That is where we typically ask the construction traffic to go.
If it's built heavy enough to handle it, then.
We're not designing it, but it is a commercial area out front. Typically, those have a thicker pavement standard to them than your residential streets do. Brent, I don't know what the specifics are in Georgetown, if there are. You get a few more inches of base typically. Put you on the spot, sorry.
Yeah, right. Rory is correct that sometimes for commercial streets that it will be, it's not necessarily in their subregs specified that it needs to be heavier duty, but just because everybody knows that there's going to be more traffic, it's designed that way from the get-go. This particular section, although it does go by Golden Corral and through some commercial, has actually, because of its narrow width, it was designed more as a residential street. So in this particular case, it doesn't have the benefit of extra thing. Now, I don't have the answer. The construction traffic has to get in there. Whether you come across Icabana and a portion of Riviera, is that the best, or do you put them on Old Oxford, which is substandard? I don't have the answer for you guys, but that's kind of, it has to go somewhere. And so, where's the best spot? Historically, we say that for two reasons. One is to hopefully not damage subdivision streets that are built, but then two, it's just the nuisance of the existing residents for having construction trucks going in and out all the time. So from that standpoint, diverting them to Old Oxford, makes sense from that standpoint. But at the same time, Old Oxford Road is kind of substandard, so now you're putting large trucks on a road which might make it more unsafe than it is already.
Did you get your answer?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Glenn Hoskins. I'm one of the developers of this entity. And with respect to that construction access you're talking about, I understand the concerns. Our concern would be that we not put it in at this point, because if you look on the prior drawing, we're really about a third of the way through this project. The next section that we come before you to seek approval of, we are going to hit the 100 lot threshold. And at that point, we are going to have to actually build the road all the way back to Old Oxford and do those improvements. So as Rory pointed out, I think you're talking about almost 2/3 of a mile of a construction gravel roadway to get back there, which would be a considerable expense on a road that's not improved. And so for those reasons, we would ask that you kind of relax that requirement of the construction access for this phase, and then the next phase, then we will have to build the road all the way back to Old Oxford and do all those other improvements. Thank you.
Joe, was the fire department involved on this, or any at all? I mean, how they feel about being able to get back in there? Is there turnarounds for them and their trucks when they have to go back in there?
Yeah, that's part of the turnaround requirement. They were at TRC and just commented on the hydrant location. So,
Pull up the previous one. I was not involved in phase 4. When they did phase 4, they asked that Ikebana be extended beyond the lots that they were creating, so that it would tie into Shadow Pass, so that there was a alternative route out. The other option would have been to go in and construct a turnaround, cul-de-sac, hammerhead, one of those typical turnarounds. So what we've done with this one, we extended the proposed street, gets us down. There's that one lot that's kind of all by himself, and the reason we did that is that those two stub streets that would form around him provides the turnaround area. Once those are dedicated, it's a modified hammerhead, so anyone, streets are 60, 80, so it's almost 100 feet in either direction. So even if you had a semi in there, he'd be able to do a 3-point turnaround.
Any more questions for the applicant or staff? Thank you, Roy. Charlie, got anybody here to speak on this one?
Any other persons sworn in to speak to this application?
My name is Paul Kemper. I live on Riviera Drive. It says here the golf townhomes. I didn't know that. I can't even see the golf course from my house. But anyway, before you vote to approve this project, I would ask that you consider the ramifications of putting 50 more cars a day on the road in this development. Consider, please, the entire development of Cherry Blossom. There are only two ways in or out of this development. Oxford Road, which terminates on Connector Road, and Blossom Park Drive, which terminates on Connector Road. When Toyota is changing shifts, the traffic will be stopped on Connector Road all the way from Applebee's clear up past Tractor Supply. It can take 4 to 5 cycles of the light for us to get out of our neighborhood. Now, the new intersection that they're building off the interstate is going to make no difference whatsoever to the traffic on Connector Road. The majority of the traffic on Connector Road, when Toyota comes or goes, is coming from the east on Paris Pike, Highway 460. So they're not even on the interstate. Connecting Ikebana over to Old Oxford Road, where does that terminate? On Connector Road. So you still have a bottleneck there. So I would respectfully ask you to put a moratorium on any more development in this Cherry Blossom development until you come up with some kind of solution for these traffic problems. It is a real problem trying to get in and out of our neighborhood during these periods of time when Toyota is coming and going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for this application?
Any more discussion from the commission? I kind of agree with what the last gentleman said with the traffic out there. We're gonna, every time something comes up, I'm not for it out there. It's just, we've got to do something out there. I don't know what we do, but something's got to happen soon. I don't know if we need to sit down Joe at the office and start coming up with some kind of a plan to get with the city, county, state, whoever to see if we can get some kind of a future plan for out in this area. You said the last traffic study or area study was in 2007. That's quite a few years ago now. And still nothing has been done since then out in that area. We really got to start putting some teeth into something in this area. This area is not going to slow down. They've got a concept plan here. They would surely like to build it out one of these days, but we've got to start getting some infrastructure in that area going somehow or another. So,
Charlie, can we require a traffic study before we move on this?
Yeah, ordinarily I would probably
More
say
research.
sure. The difficulty here, as I understand it, the last time in, we said after 100 you're going to do such and such. And so basically now we're thinking about saying, well, no, at whatever this is, 99. I mean, substantially we're there, but I mean, we gave them a specific requirement, and they're apparently meeting that requirement. I would feel better, basically, if we had our own traffic study to say we were wrong then, and now we have to do something different. I'm not going to say you can't do that, because obviously there's a problem out there. But it does bother me that we gave them a specific requirement, and they're meeting that requirement, and now we're thinking we might need to go a different direction.
If I could respond to that, this reminds me of the last time we were here for phase 4. We're getting into the realm of zone change issues. When you talk about number of lots and all that, all of those issues, traffic studies and all that kind of stuff, really were dealt with or should have been dealt with when the property was zoned back in 1999 when we had the master development plan. And we all agree there's a problem up there at Connector Road, and we've tried to solve, we have solved part of it by buying a lot over on the other side of New Oxford Drive and making that connection so the subdivision could go right over to Cherry Blossom Way. That was a big help. We did that at our expense. But you're talking about problems that we didn't create. These are problems created by the other subdivisions that have been zoned years after we came along on the other side of Old Oxford Road, and the apartment project, which we objected to, but nevertheless, and you all denied, but the city commission, the city council approved the Lifestyles apartment project on Connector. So there's a lot of history of that, and that's really beyond the scope of what we're here for tonight. This is simply to get another phase of our project approved as a subdivision that fully complies with all the subdivision regs. We're doing this in full compliance with the subdivision regulations, and it's just another step of a previously granted zone change. So I'm just throwing that as a point of relevance to another traffic study. I'm not sure that would be appropriate in this case. Thank you.
Any more comments? Questions for staff, anything?
I have a problem with the variances.
Go ahead.
Both reduction of the setback, reduction of the minimum width at 50 feet.
You all right with the other two?
Hmm?
Are you all right with the other two with the,
Well, obviously, if you reduce the width, then you're reducing the minimum lot area.
Right.
I mean, those are hand in hand.
John, I assume you're thinking like me, when you got a traffic problem, you don't need to be packing more lots in there already?
Well, that and a 50-foot wide building lot is atrocious from personal experience. You know, I've never been a big proponent, even though I have done it on existing lots with the 7.5, foot setbacks. There again, and two, Stephen, what you're saying, we're just trying to pack as many in as we possibly can in a small area. I don't totally agree with that.
What's that leave, 35 foot?
Hmm?
What's that leave, 35 foot to build a house on?
Yeah, in width. It's pretty tough to do. And I'm sure y'all have got plans that'll fit that just fine, I assume, but,
Yeah, this is a continuation
if
of
we keep, yeah.
what's built there now.
Yeah. That's my concern.
Any further comments?
I agree a little bit on that, the 20-foot setback on the front setback would be only 20 feet. You got vehicles now that are longer than 20 feet, you'd be parked out from the garage. If the door's down, the tailgate would be out in the street.
I agree, but I agree.
Excuse me, I might add, as far as that width goes and distance, we live in the Phase 3 section of Cherry Blossom. I have a pickup truck that I cannot put in my garage. It sits in the driveway all day because the lots are so narrow in the older section, and that's a 30-foot setback. They're asking for a 20. I can't imagine what size garage you would have there.
On the 20-foot setback, I think Joe did mention that the one we approved prior to this one, we approved with 20-foot setbacks, didn't we? So, I mean, it is consistent But I can't agree, I don't like 20-foot setback either, but we have approved it.
And Joe, were the other phases 50-foot?
Phase 1 and 2 weren't, because phase 1 was the private area, phase 2 was the attached townhomes. So I think there were 4 or 5 townhome units. They were, I believe they were 20-foot setback, but phase 3 and 4 were 50-foot wide.
Or what? How much was it?
50-foot wide lots. Minimum. Some may have been larger or wider.
So we approved some with 50.
Right. 53.
Change my mind anytime I want to. It's time to continue to make the same mistakes.
Yeah, I agree with you there, John. I agree with that. I did it wrong before, doesn't mean we have to do it wrong again.
Yeah.
And the townhouse lots where there are the triplexes, that middle units, about 35 feet, 32, depending on which one they actually build. I mean, I know you're all having trouble with this, but there's a...
It's from the center line, too.
Yeah, I was just going with the width.
Oh,
Yeah, and they're all curves. But, you know, this is a approved master plan. Last phase it was approved, and they had all this, it was before I was involved. But it was the master plan that y'all approved with the last phase, granting up to that 100-unit mark. Same units that we're doing now is what they have been building out there the last 2 phases. The lots that we're up next to is the same as what we're asking for this time. Your motions had going over the 100 mark, it would be the next access on Old Oxford. Developers stood up here and said that he understands that's his next step. After this phase is done, his next step will have to be addressing the rest of the way out. He's got a master plan that shows the street systems, that shows the lots, shows his 20-foot building line setback. And it's what they've been told they can build and are approved to do. We're
What
just
year would
asking for
that be?
Build out year? When was 4?
Depends on the market. As soon as possible, we hope.
But just because we have approved 20-foot setbacks in the past doesn't mean we have to approve it now. We do not have to grant the variance. We do not
Right.
have to approve that, right?
We don't have to approve the
Well, I
variance.
think that's true. But again, that is part of the master plan to approve. If we've got specific reasons to say that that didn't work and we need to change it, then absolutely. I feel uneasy if all we do is to say we don't like it without having a specific reason. I mean, I understand the comment about that's a narrow lot. I would agree, not that I know as much as you do about that. But on the other hand, it's apparently been something that's been satisfactory twice. We don't have a specific finding. If we do, then we need to call upon it. And if we do have one, then I think we say it proved to be an improvident variance the last time. We're not going to do it again for this reason. Then I can understand Glenn's problem with it, but it's going to work and it's going to stand. But I think we need to be more specific about it. It may well be, if the commission's feeling is strong, then let's put this off a month, have staff study it and come back and make those specific findings as to why we don't feel it's appropriate to do that again. But you're certainly right. If it's a mistake, we don't need to make a second swipe at the same mistake. But we need to have a reason why it is a mistake, other than just, I don't like that.
Well, we have at least this one gentleman's testimony that it's not working very well.
Not at all.
So that's just one
Then
case,
we
but
need
still.
to
it's
flesh that
evidence.
out as to why it's not working well at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't doubt his word, but we need to know specifically why that is. And then that may well be a sufficient reason.
I think our big problem here is we're not getting any help from
The
we're
other-
not getting any help from the
powers-
state.
the powers that
Our hands
be.
are tied.
Yes,
We
sir,
know
I
what
think-
needs to be done, but nothing's happening.
I think that's a real portion of this, yes, sir.
We're expected to keep approving more and more stuff in here when there's nothing but a problem there to start with. We said it the last time, just like you said. Well, this will be the last one. We're not gonna do any more.
Seems to me 99 is close enough to 100. I know it's not legally, but in reality it is.
Everybody.
As I said, if we can make specific findings as to why that was not an appropriate number to reach, then fine, let's change the number. But I think for the consistency and reliability of both sides of the aisle, I think we need to say, if we think that was a mistake, then fine, let's justify why it was a mistake and say to him, forget the 100. I think we need to start talking at, 85, whatever it might be. But I just think we need to have a little bit more specifics, and I don't like that.
But the problem with that, Charlie, is that's making a connection to Old Oxford Road, which not gonna help anything. I mean, you're still dumping out on Connector Road. You might be able to get in line and wait for 6 lights to get out instead of 4.
And it may well be that the direction you need to go then is to say, we are at the point where
No more.
forget the 100, we can't do it at all until something happens. And if that's the case, document that and then make that your action. But to say the same thing we did last time, but yet we approved 50 or 20, whatever it was, give them a specific target, they're not at the target, then say, well, never mind. Well, let's just have a good reason for that, and then do what you gotta do to make it appropriate out there. Because that is your responsibility.
When was the last approval made out there? You remember?
Cherry Blossom?
When was that last?
A couple of years ago.
2012, I believe.
Yeah, maybe at the most.
We approved one that reduced the density from, there was a reduction in density from what previous.
Well,
plan
what
was.
I'm getting at, that was a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. What's changed out in that area in that time? As far as Connector Road, we've got the 2 new restaurants on Connector Road. Is that all that's happened on Connector Road?
We have the one approval of the vet clinic to kind of a commercial center.
Yeah.
But that hasn't been
That hadn't
done
come up.
yet.
But what's been improved out there now is just the restaurants.
Okay, May 2012 was the date.
What's significant stuff has changed. Toyota's expanded, which has created a lot more traffic on Connector Road. Toyota's expansion has expanded a lot of other places, such as Butech, International Crankshaft, all these other places. That's creating more traffic on these roads. I don't know if that's reason enough to say that the heck with the 100, but to me that seems like a good reason.
Well, my recommendation on having a good reason, that doesn't mean I'm gonna sit here and say that's not good enough, add to it. You all need to be comfortable that you've got a reason, you need to state it as clearly as possible, and then take your action accordingly. My thought is, I'm not real comfortable with a record that says, I don't like this, let's
Yes,
change it.
I agree.
You cite the reasons for it, the best reasons you can do, and hopefully they'll be satisfactory, and we'll go with it. But I just say you need to have reasons. Now, does that mean that you should postpone this one and do your own traffic study? Well, I don't know. But at the very least, you need to cite traffic, you need to cite, any number of things that come to play on it.
I mean, we have the traffic counts from 2007 from the Northeast Georgetown study. And we can go to the state and get the current traffic counts on the state roads. So we can do that comparison, which I've kind of done. I got the traffic counts from the state, and I didn't quite believe the numbers, so we'll have to do some investigation further, because they actually dropped in a lot of areas, traffic counts, from 2007 to 2012.
On Connector Road they dropped?
Connector Road, I think they stayed about the same. They dropped in some areas. They increased on Cherry Blossom. According to the numbers I saw on the website, on the KYTC website, for their most current traffic counts at their traffic, count locations. So I mean, I think that would have to be looked at further. I didn't kind of introduce it because I didn't have time to verify it all, but we could do that. We could spend the time and try and figure that out. Exactly what recent counts do we have? I mean, we have we looked into putting a light there at the turn on Connector Road, and they did a warrant count, the state did in 2013, so we have those numbers. We could try and pull them all together and figure out, give you some idea of what the traffic increase has been in the area.
And I was thinking in 2013 that they said we weren't even near the count that we needed to have that light.
That's
So
what
the
they
problem
said.
is it all hits at once, it seems like.
Yeah.
It's all it's between
I
3:30
think,
and
yeah,
5.
shift change, that's when we have the major problems, when, other
Shift and
periods.
change,
it's-
stay away from that area.
I don't know, 2013, and it seems like so long ago, because to me, that road stays busy all day long. I don't care what time you're there. That's just one busy road. Connector Road is just, it's up to the max if you ask me. I don't, maybe somebody from the state needs to come down and drive on it and stay on it for a while, but that's just my opinion of it. But I mean, I'm kinda like in favor of what Joe is saying. Maybe we need to continue this to next month and let's do a little bit of looking into it and a little bit of investigation, and get some numbers together and see where we're at. That's up to the commission, what the commission wants to do, so.
I so move that we continue it to next month.
I'll second that motion.
I'll third it.
We've got a, okay, hold on, let's slow down. Let me get this real. All right, we got a motion to continue it, Charlie, would be the way we want to do it. Continue. What's
Do
that
a
date?
traffic study.
What's that date in September we meet? The 10th. All right, we have a motion to continue this application to September,
The September meeting.
September the 10th.
Traffic studies done in the meantime, talk with
Get some discussion done with the state.
transportation.
See where we're at with this area. Is that,
Oh, I was hoping for approval, but.
well, I know you was. That's better than getting denied.
It is.
So, we have a motion by Mr. Wiseman for a continuance. We have a second by Mr. Solsky. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion approved.
So that was a continuation?
Yep,
September.
continuation.
September.
And staff and applicant know all the information we need to get from them.
Joe, you got that, what you need to do?
I have one more question. For the past 2 days, they've had a very large bulldozer knocking down trees in this area. I assume that meant they thought they were gonna go ahead and start?
We'll have to look into that. Can we get somebody out there tomorrow, Brent? Check that out.
Brent, yeah.
All right, moving right along. Next on the agenda is Hillendale Final Subdivision Plat. These next two, I'll have to recuse myself on. John Shirley will be going from here.
I'm gonna have to recuse myself as well.
Mr. Caldwell is recusing himself also.
Well, while we're at it, can I leave too?
Well, it's all.
Nice try, Charlie.
Yeah, for the next one.
All right. All right. The next two applications have to do with the Hillendale project. I'm going to go over the development plan prior to the subdivision plat, largely because there's a question about the multi-use trail facility and how that should be constructed, and a potential easement that would need to be shown on the plat dependent upon what's discussed here with the development plan. So I'd like to do the development plan first. This project is PDP 2015-23. It's a development plan for 295 apartment units at 252 McClellan Circle. With this development, it's zoned R2 PUD. It's meeting our 12 units per acre density requirement those 295 units would have a total of 489 bedrooms. They're well below the building percent coverage for the area. There's existing access on McClellan Circle and a future proposed connection to Bevins Lane, which we can get into a little bit more discussion in the future. Let's see if I can get this to work. We've been having some trouble. There we go. I just wanted to show you with an aerial with zoning where the lot is located. This is the parent tract for the site. Right now, we're just looking at the portion of the property that's currently zoned R2, and this zoning was approved by, or recommended for approval by the commission back in April of this year. The proposed development plan is very similar to the concept plan that was submitted at the time of that approval. I do have one more, I think just an aerial of the site in general. You can see that it's located off McClellan Circle. It's located across from the Kroger Marketplace development. This is the location of the existing traffic light for reference. When we talk about Bevins Lane, this is the street that we're talking about. And then the Bradley property is this property to the west. There is one existing variance on the site that was granted at the time of the zone change approval, and that's a waiver to allow the building units to have up to 28 units as a maximum, rather than the standard of 6 units. That was discussed as part of the R2 PUD zoning, the planned unit development. The reasoning behind that was to allow the developer to meet and stay within the overall density on the site, but to give them some more freedom in the arrangement of the apartment structures and allow them to step down in intensity level the structures from the northern portion of the site to the southern portion of the site. And that's largely been accomplished with this plan, though there are a couple fairly large structures on this southern portion still. The type 1 structures, it's difficult to see at this scale, but you might be able to see a little bit easier in the plans that were mailed to you. The type 1s are located, the closest one to the southern part is here, and that's the largest building. But one of the things with the PUD, I know Joe mentioned it before in his presentation as well, a PUD allows you to kind of make some exceptions to the typical standards in exchange for increasing open space or public amenities, or providing different layouts that provide benefits to the site overall. So that's one of the points that I'm going to talk about as we're going through the plan. In terms of the site layout, they've met all of the regs that we have with the inclusion of that waiver. They're meeting the setbacks. The buildings themselves are 2 stories, 28 feet tall, and they range from 14 units per building to 28 units per building. There's also a central kind of public space with a clubhouse and a pool located off of the main entrance. This is the existing pump station that's located off of this particular site, although there is an access drive that's currently located along the east and northern borders of the property. The applicant has proposed that access be granted on the private drive and then rejoin that existing path approximately at the location that I'm showing on the screen. So this portion of the drive is proposed to remain. They will need to, in the future, if they choose to remove this access easement, that'll need to be done with a future plat. As far as vehicular and pedestrian access go, the applicant has shown very substantial pedestrian sidewalk circulation throughout and adequate vehicular use spaces. They've met the parking requirements with 599 parking spaces, and that's included in garages as well as surface parking. in terms of some additions that I would like to see on this site, at the existing entrance on McClellan Circle, and this is small, but just the extension of the sidewalk from the what I'm assuming to be the rear of these properties. I'm not positive though. Well, that's the front. There's parking over there, but extending this kind of northern sidewalk out to this intersection, and then as long as the state agrees with this, I think that it would be beneficial to provide crosswalks along McClellan Circle, that because there is an existing light there, it would allow the residents to be able to get over to Kroger Marketplace more easily if they had that pedestrian facility. So this would be the primary entrance. There's a secondary entrance right now that's proposed on the eastern portion of the property. Right now, the applicant is trying to get in touch with the owner of this parcel to coordinate what we're calling the second entrance, kind of second intersection. By our subregs, apartment complexes over 100 units are required to have a second intersection. And there's only one frontage. A second entrance right along the same area doesn't make sense, but I believe that it is feasible to make this connection as long as the owner agrees to that. And so one of the conditions that we'll see later is to make this connection as long as they're able to get that approval. The applicant does have a proposal that if this isn't approved, they could potentially build a stub out along the Bradley property for future development on that site. Just want to make sure that I've hit all of the standards. In terms of landscaping, I've had some preliminary discussions with Rory, the engineer. I don't have the full level of detail in terms of the plant material, because the city has now passed the revised landscape ordinance. I wanted to work with Rory by the final to just make sure that we get those new standards met, and that'll include the reduction in the interior VUA trees required. So that has been reduced from 2 trees per 250 square feet down to 1 tree per 250 square feet. But there's the addition of canopy standards. With the canopy standards, there'll be 15 to 20% canopy area required on the site, and that 15 to 20 is dependent upon how much tree canopy is preserved. And there is a substantial area along the borders that the applicant is intending to preserve. So we'll need to run some calculations and see exactly how much will be saved. One thing that I forgot I had this slide. This is just, this is not the exact building structures, but just a sample of similar types of buildings to what would be proposed on site. I believe when I was looking at these, they had about 19, 20 units in them, just for an idea of the kind of look and feel of the structures. The applicant might be able to give you a little bit more detail if you have specific questions there. One thing that I wanted to talk about in a little bit more detail is the pedestrian and vehicular access points. So the applicant, from speaking with them, I think they're in agreement with the general conditions for the intersection at McClellan Circle, and then making sure that that second connection is feasible. We've since talked after TRC, or not TRC, after workshop on Monday, just to clarify one of the conditions. The way that I wrote it, it made it seem that if the owner of the adjoining property on the east did not want to allow them to build on their site, that it would basically grant kind of a veto power on the development plan. So I've revised condition number 5 based on a recommendation from the applicant to state that the applicant will provide they'll build the infrastructure basically to the power that they're able to. So if they aren't able to build on that site, or they're not able to get an agreement, they'll build a stub out either if they can't get agreement with that owner, I think it would probably be better to go over to the Bradley property. They do not want to build on the Bradley property. Obviously, it's currently zoned A1. We don't know if or when that will develop, and it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate to make them build that now, but at least making sure that it's built up to that property line, so if that property is developed, that connection can be made. In terms of the multi-use trail, that's something that I wanted to talk a little bit more about. In 2012, when a previous zone change was approved on the site, one of the conditions was that a multi-use trail would be built through the site as part of the construction. When the zone was updated back in April, the condition was changed to say that the construction and responsibility of construction would be determined at this meeting tonight with the preliminary development plan. And so it's something that needs to be discussed, whether it is built now or built in the future. And if it's built in the future, how do you do that? Is it just designating a location, or is it actually creating an easement on the plat in the future? And so if this moves, that green's a little bit hard to see, but there's two options that I see with this plat. What I'm calling option 1 is staff's preferred choice, which would be to expand an existing sidewalk that's shown within the plan. And from looking at it, it looks like it's already shown to be about 6 feet wide, just to expand that to 8 feet. So it'd be an additional 2 feet. From this traffic light in along the kind of main access, and then down through the center of the property, and then leave kind of potential open for what direction that connection to the green belt and adjoining properties would be made in. Option 2 is very similar to the option shown by the applicant with their submission. As they showed option 2, it would be kind of they're basically showing a location for a future trail, but not yet dedicating an actual easement for the site. And part of that may have been because they weren't precisely sure, where it was going to be. But I would really recommend that if option 2 is selected, that we require an actual easement to be dedicated now, so that we know for sure it's there, rather than waiting until the future. They did place a couple of notes on the development plan. I don't remember exactly what they were, but they were in the last 2 or 3 notes on that plan, and they basically state that the developer is aware that there's intent to have a greenbelt trail, and that this would connect to it, and that they do intend to eventually dedicate right-of-way. I just think that it would be a lot more certain if that easement is established now rather than later. But the reason that I would like to push for option 1 is basically because we've already been told a couple of times that a trail was going to be built, and they're trying to, move away from that. I know that they've stated they don't necessarily want it to go through the center of the property. That wasn't in their plans. But I think that will best serve the residents within the development, because it will give them the most immediate access to that multi-use trail. It will allow both residents and potential future users, once that trail connects on the south, and also to the north, there is there is an existing trail back behind Kroger. So it's not completely going to nowhere, but it does have some extension to the south that would be necessary. One of the reasons that I think it's important to build it now is that the zoning that was granted, the PUD process, allows them kind of some advantages in the site dimension and area regulations. We've given them some benefits of building larger buildings, trying to tier back from high density to low, which it's largely accomplished, but I think there may be some ways that that could have been done a little bit differently. But one of the things with PUDs is by giving them some advantages, typically we see some dedicated open space, park area, public amenities, ways to kind of balance out more intense development. And I think that this type of trail would be a really good public and resident amenity through this space. So, I mean, they do have this bit of open space. The location that we've shown here would connect that. And so I do believe that it would serve the residents. It would serve them now rather than waiting till the future where we don't know if this location will work that great. You know, you're going to be grading and doing all of the work now. Might as well get it in while we can. There's some grading issues and some environmental concerns that I think were located on this portion of the lot. As it is shown, the applicant showed this northern portion of the trail off of their site, and I would recommend that if option 2 is selected, that it be required to be within the site so that the land can be dedicated. That is really tiny font. Sorry for that. I'm recommending approval of this development plan. There are no additional waivers or variances requested, but there is that existing waiver allowing the buildings of up to 28 units that was granted with the PUD. The conditions of approval include any of the applicable conditions from the previous zone changes. There's a slight just correction that needs to be made on the zoning of an adjoining property, updating that it's A1. In terms of, there's some landscape requirements that Rory and I will work out. This is basically just stating that we'll work out by the final all of the typical landscaping requirements, including arterial buffering, vehicle use area buffering, property perimeter buffering between agricultural and multifamily areas, as well as the new canopy requirements. So just stating explicitly that those will all be addressed by the final. Slightly larger. Condition number 4 states that the applicant shall be responsible for all off-site roadway improvements for McClellan Circle, as long as they get that state approval. That includes sidewalks and the crosswalk that I had mentioned before. Condition number 5 has been slightly amended since the packets were distributed to you. I had originally written that they would make the roadway and pedestrian connections to Bevins Lane, but as that's written legally, that could be a little bit kind of binding if they weren't able to get that agreement. The applicant has assured me that they are working with or reaching out to that owner. Planning staff would be more than happy to help make that connection or even try to facilitate a meeting just to make sure that a good faith effort has been established to make that connection. And I believe that the applicant's willing to make it if they can get that agreement.
Is that with the church?
That's with the church property. And if that is not able to be made, then they would move to that secondary kind of stub out for the west side to the Bradley property. So with this this update, it now states that the applicant shall be responsible for all off-site roadway and sidewalk improvements for the site's second access connection. And we just left it at second access so that that change could be made if necessary. Condition number 6 is the 8-foot wide multi-use trail, the decision that was kind of postponed to tonight to figure out who's responsible for building it, when are they responsible for building it. And so I've left you what I described as option 1 and option 2, and those are reflected as option A and B in this condition. So you would select either 6A or 6B. The last 3 conditions are standard. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do you have any questions for Megan?
On your trail thing.
Mm-hmm.
if I were walking on a trail, I'd much rather go with option 2, it seems to me, because you've got the back of the church, you know, the kind of a open area there. It's a little more rural, you might say. Option 1 seems like you're walking through like a rat maze of apartments and everything, and not as pleasant. Also, it's for bikes too, right? And bikes on the sidewalk, it seems to me like would not be a great idea.
Well, I think you'd have to classify it differently than a sidewalk. So you would label it as a multi-use trail.
Well, it's 8 foot wide, but still, it's a concrete thing, right?
It could be concrete. It could potentially be asphalt. Put up signage. You can put bollards so that cars don't try and drive on it. There would be plenty of vehicular use area, landscaping, and it would go along kind of a public open space. And it provides an immediate connection for more users. It's kind of similar to what the Anderson development would be, how it works through kind of livable areas to connect people. There's different preferences.
And the other thing is the second entrance. I was out there the other day and drove down that road. It's a dumpy, Bevins Lane's a dumpy little road, and it gets even dumpier when you get to, it turns down to Gano Church. Now, that would have to be made much more substantial, right, if that was chosen, at their expense, I presume.
Yeah, I think we would have to
Real road.
work out exactly what's out there, what approval they can get. It would be something that we would need to continue discussion on.
Well, what's wrong with going at the northeast corner of the development, and two entrances onto, the McDonald's?
I don't think the state would approve that.
Oh, too close?
You know, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The bad thing, if you go to the Bradley property, is it gonna then be connected onto McClellan, or is
They
it just
do
gonna
have,
dead end into
they do have,
Bradley?
the Bradley property is fairly wide, and they do have another connection point that if that site should develop, it would probably extend through the property to the opposite end of that lot.
Oh, it actually go all the way
Mhm.
through the lot?
I would think it would connect through.
They have frontage on McClellan themselves, the Bradley do that.
Okay.
There's oh wait.
Yeah. The applicant could probably address that one too.
Thanks, Rory.
Any other questions? Thank you, Maggie.
Good evening. Nick Nicholson here on behalf of Ball Homes. Rory Cayley with EA Partners is also here, as is Buddy Goodwin with Ball Homes. With respect to everyone's time that has been here so long, I will, very briefly address basically what the only two issues there are. First of all, with the access. With the zoning, when we had the zone change, Mr. Wiseman, you pointed out that if that connection is made with the church, you could see a lot of traffic coming through there. I could see the church basically saying, no way, no how, do we want that to come in? Unfortunately, the church's pastor just passed away. And so they are trying to kind of figure out, okay, well, who can we delegate to deal with this situation? We've already reached out to them. If we can work out a deal, we very much we're open to do it. If you are sitting down from a 10,000-foot kind of location looking down on how this should be developed, you probably want to use the Bradley property, quite frankly. And that's why we wanted to make sure that the stub possibility was addressed and brought up. We didn't want you all to think we were doing some type of bait and switch when you all saw the final development plan and that connection wasn't actually made with the church. We certainly want to talk with them, but there are a lot of issues with having that second access through the church. And so it is concerning, and we very much share your exact same issues.
At your expense, you would make it a much more substantial road.
It would probably have to be, given that this secondary access, as you just saw with the last one, it's more of a safety valve type situation. It's not meant as your main access point at all. So something would have to be done. And so that is what we all have to sit down and figure out and kind of work with our new neighbors. The only other thing we really need to discuss is the trail. And I'm hoping I will be able to go back. You want to do this? Well, I don't know what I did. The two options. You all know where they are.
Back while she's
Yes.
doing that, back to
Yes.
Bevins or Trail, would you
Yes.
have to get permission from the church as well as the medical? Because I think it's two properties you'd go through to get on McClellan, isn't it?
The medical, the church basically owns that property. The medical is more on Eddard Lane
So they
and
actually do
area.
own the road all the way to McClellan?
But yeah, that hits McClellan. And so, but it would have to be the church that would grant us access to that kind of stubby driveway that there is right now.
Because it seems like that road goes through the medical clinic's property. I could be wrong.
It's the same, it's the same kind of way, yes.
Joe, it does go through two separate properties? You'd have to get, you'd have
I
to-
don't know if we would have to get the medical, I'll have to find that out.
Some sort of maintenance agreement.
Right.
To figure it out.
I don't know if that had become a public road yet or not in that area, but again, that's a problem. And so we wanted to make sure that we kind of, brought up that relief valve on the other side as well, so that could also be addressed as a possibility. With regards to the trail, Mr. Wiseman, again, we're on the same page. When I think Greenway trails, I think Greenway. If we go with option one, regardless of whether it is asphalt, whether it is dedicated area or not, what you are doing is going basically from what would be a sidewalk typically onto a drive use aisle, back to a sidewalk, back to a drive use aisle, back to a sidewalk, then back through a drive use aisle, and then finally the sidewalk up to McClellan. That's not my vision of what a Greenway trail is, or what the community would want it to be. That ties in with the fact that there are so many unknowns that we're dealing with this trail. We don't know when it's coming, if it's coming, who's paying for it, and most importantly, we have no conceptual plan for what this thing is going to look like aesthetically and where it could possibly tie in to the property down on the south end. We don't feel it's wise to basically build a trail to nowhere in the middle of our development, right through the heart, as you can see, without any further information on how exactly this thing is going to function. It's also, quite frankly, a safety issue. You're asking pedestrians to mix with cars. That's what you're doing. You're asking bikes to mix with cars because you're going straight through what is our parking lot. Any traffic engineer, pedestrian planner, they don't want cars and people really mixing. And especially when you're dealing with dedicated multi-use trails, you want dedicated area. And that's kind of why we were pushing for the dedicated easement that's basically option 2. It's also a security issue for our complex. We have a private complex for a reason. These are all private roads. They're not basically open to the public. We are going to have fencing around there. It's going to comply with the Greenway fencing requirements. But essentially, by having this go straight through the heart of the development, you are encouraging the public to come into our development. And whether or not you know your neighbors or not when you live in apartments, you have an idea who they are, you have an idea who their cars are, you know if someone is out of place. This gives anybody an excuse to be wandering through our parking lot without any supervision, without any security. That's not what's best for clients. That's not what's best for our customers. Also, the green space that we have here, that's a feature kind of for our selling point. If we open it up, basically if you open up this trail system through there, it brings a whole lot of issues as far as general cost go, and not just who is going to construct it, not just if we add 2 more feet of pavement here. What we're talking about is future, basically, repair work. Who's maintaining this? If this trail system is built with state funds, any type of maintenance that's going there then has to be bid out. So Ball Homes is going to have a situation where our complex has an issue right on this little trail. We want to go ahead and fix it, but the funds that built part of it, built the trail system, are tied to a state contract. So we have to bid it out to everybody? Are we allowed to just go ahead and fix it? And if so, is that really fair that we go ahead and fix it when our residents are no longer the primary users of this area? It causes just a lot more of issues than we really think it gains, because again, it goes back to what you want is a Greenway trail. This is a trail that meanders through an apartment complex. It's much better if we go ahead and dedicate an easement, go up the alley, basically where you are by the church property, that's green space, and we'll be able to put up, basically the greenway fences there, we'll be able to do whatever is needed. Our site's secure, it's dedicated space, it's much more essentially aesthetically pleasing, and it would fit with the full trail system. Whatever that trail ends up being made out of, what other wayfinding signs there are, it just makes more sense to put it outside of the middle of the parking lot. I'm happy to basically answer any questions about the development plan as a whole. I just wanted to touch on that, so hopefully we'd be able to get out of here in, before 10. Who knows?
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I do have one. Did you say
Yes.
either way you would not pay for the trail?
No, it's more of how do you deal with future maintenance of it. If this is going through the middle, obviously, as Megan pointed out, we're building already. We're doing everything through the middle of it. Of course, we'll add the extra 2 feet of concrete there, or asphalt, or whatever it tends to be. The problem comes, how do we deal with future repercussions? If there's an issue on, say, maybe it's just the 2 feet, maybe it's the whole sidewalk, something happens there. If the building of the trail, the dedicated trail, is tied to state funds, how do we deal with that situation? It's also no longer just our residents' property. This is the heart of private property, yet it's now dedicated to the public. So how exactly is that going to be maintained? Is that then the county's responsibility? Can we then act to repair that? It's not as simple as just saying, okay, we'll put a trail right there. We'd have to work out some type of maintenance agreement with whatever body ends up creating the trail system. Again, we don't even have one of those to talk to. So there are just too many unknowns to go ahead and build a trail that right now goes to nowhere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak on this application?
Option 2 as well. I'm Jared Burdine, I'm the general manager at Hillendale. We actually still own the property, as now not developing it, but I've walked every inch of that property multiple times with my dog. Either way, there's our option 2 is it follows a natural line. There's already like an easement road that goes down to the pump house that follows that option 2 basically already. You guys, there's a pump house right here. I don't know if anybody else that's
right here.
yeah. The south side of this, the south side of this is Cane Run Creek on the back side of it. So that's spent a lot of time down there. And we also, so there's kind of I've walked that actual. There's a gravel road that goes down to the pump house and all that other stuff. Follows it almost like the same green line there. It's perfect setting for a trail like that. Anyways, back whenever in 2012, whenever we agreed to the trail or whatever, it was kind of meant to be just along Cane Run Creek to begin with, because we also got the adjoining property that's to the I guess it's to the east of it, down behind the church all the way to Eder Lane there.
So
We turned it over to everything that's right on the creek. We agreed to have it to be it's zoned conservation as well. So that's kind of what the initial plans were, to have the trail kind of just follow all along the Cane Run Creek and through the natural area that's already there. And there's a drainage system. I mean, option 2 is definitely a more natural.
So how far, you got the trail that ends there at the bottom of the picture. How far could that trail in essence go if you donated conservation area? Or Joe, you may even know this. Can it go?
60 acres right there that go
So it goes straight
all
along
the way to Eder Lane.
Cane Run Creek?
We don't own it anymore. This is not part of this.
Right.
So it's donated or?
No, it's not donated to the city. It's zoned. When we were in 2012 with the zone change, what you're looking at, the 24 acres right now, was originally commercial. stores, not big box, but a lot of commercial business. What is shown there in R1A is the yellow was going to be 12 single-family lots, large lots, and the existing Eder Lane neighborhood was here in force and not happy about the whole deal. So there would be a road serving those 12 units. There's going to be a green buffer area between that road and existing Eder Lane. Inside that green buffer area was going to be the multi-use trail. Now that was what the original development plan with that zone change called for. The green belt where the trail is supposed to be is in the crosshatch, the C1 area. And that is the 60-some acres that was zoned in 2012 for that purpose. They're still waiting on the county's entity that wants to be the green belt owners, maintenance, for them to form, and then there would be agreements between the Secura properties on how that transfer of those conservation acres would get to the city's hands. So the city doesn't have any land right now out there that can be trail greenway. That's why we talk about a trail going nowhere. There's not an entity to create this green belt yet.
So the parent tract lot 2 is?
Remaining horse farm.
But that's Ball Homes or?
No, that's the Secura properties. It's their Hillendale horse farm, and it continues in Fayette County. Okay, well, it continues much.
The whole square between Ironworks and Eder Lane, that whole square.
And then the blue area there, which is C.
C1, that's the
I'm gonna have to
conservation.
start wearing my glasses. The font was real small.
Blue is conservation.
Conservation. Who owns that currently?
That was part of the yellow R1A that went to another entity, Jellystone. Jellystone. So some other entity came in and took that.
It's private. It's privately owned.
So
Yes.
in essence, that blue area there, which is green space, could be used for trails continuing.
That was why it was requested to be
So the trail,
conservational
whether
zone.
it's option 2 or 1, let's say we go with option 2, could definitely continue on.
Yeah, either option gets you down to
Right,
the
right.
blue.
Because I know you've said several times it's going to nowhere, but there is somewhere to go to and a nice.
In the master plan, but no entity to make it happen yet. Yeah.
And that's the big problem. There's not even an entity to create the trail system yet. So once that gets formed, then yes, we might have someone to talk to, but until that happens, there's nothing.
Which is, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to go on, but which, well, we're fine with the concept of reserving it there and having it there for that purpose. It's, right now, still that's still what it is. I mean,
I know we've had several public hearings about trails, and you get people that scream they need to be built, and then when we talk about building them, people come up and say, well, we don't want to build them because they go nowhere. Well, we need to connect them.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the point. I think being it on option 2 would make it.
You have to dedicate land to build it. It's there, you can't take it away.
The two notes that Megan talked about on the development plan, I think there were 9 and 10, they came from another development plan and zone change we did a couple years ago for a church on McClellan Circle up near the Canewood development and the school. And at that time, again, it was, you've got a green belt. This green belt, there's this 820 contour that's magical, and that kind of defines your green belt around Georgetown. So at that time, church also was not building. They didn't have, it was a trail to nowhere. Any trail that was going to happen in this future green belt was going to have to purchase from a lot of other farms along the way to become an entity, a space that people could go to. So those two notes were used on that development plan, which is why we put them on this one as well, because it had been a proven, approved, certified note before. And it talked about that the ownership, in that case the church, here would be the Ball Homes, they would work with the entity that Scott County or Georgetown was creating that was going to do the master plan, start getting the property, start getting the funding. And ultimately, I would think the maintenance of this trail that serves the general community would not stay within the apartment's responsibility. Option one or option two. Option two would certainly be easier, that whoever that trail entity is for the county, dedicate them an easement, not going next to the units, not going by the clubhouse and the pool, but dedicate them an easement to the side that they would be able to construct in and maintain.
Megan, how close does this come to the proposed trails from Lexington to Georgetown? Is this close, or is it nowhere in the vicinity?
This is not very close
Okay.
to.
Because I know there's
Legacy
been all
Trail.
kinds of proposed
There-
paths through Georgetown, so I didn't know if this was at all
There
ever
have
one of
been
them.
various iterations of trails and connections. At one point, when they were studying where they wanted to propose during the Legacy Trail during the feasibility study, they had shown some trail options that would cut through this portion of town, but that wasn't the one that was selected. It's something that came up, I believe, while we were also working on the US 25 South small area plan. There were some proposed trails, but again, nothing formal, nothing is finalized yet. We're currently working on a bicycle and pedestrian plan for the county. Trails along the Greenbelt have been part of the discussion, but as of yet, nothing is officially adopted. But it has been a concept to develop a trail within the Greenbelt as long as I've been here. That's been discussed. So in terms of an entity to organize it, I have not yet spoken specifically about this project to Public Works. I don't know what their long-range vision for that area is, and that probably should have happened before tonight, but that would be a conversation that I could have with them in the future, just to see, potential future dedication once enough length is established, or I'm not sure. It would take some more discussion, obviously, to figure out how that would work.
I know I see a few residents from Bradford walking to Kroger's, and so a trail from this apartment complex to Kroger's would be nice. Now, ideally through the middle, I'm not sure. If you're off to the side, yeah. If you're off to the side and kind of corner the property there, if I'm an apartment resident, I'm not going to walk all the way over to the trail to walk to Kroger's. But to walk right through the middle of it would kind of be nice.
But you still got a sidewalk, they can do that.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a sidewalk, you can do that, but I think I'm along the same mindset is if you make a nicer facility,
If you did an
more people are
asphalt,
going to
you'd see
choose
some moms
that
pushing
amenity.
strollers. You'd see a couple people riding bikes. I actually do see it in Bradford. I really do. And I know there was some argument before I was on this commission, because I think Kroger's was actually going to have a road into Bradford, and the neighbors went crazy, and that's why they have the concrete beams or the steel beams there, so you can only walk. But I don't know. It's nice.
And that's the issue, is that you would be putting pedestrians right in vehicular use areas.
I don't think anybody's
There's-
been killed in Bradford yet.
There's 3 crossings.
There's a reason why you need dedicated.
There's one here, and then the other 2 are on the southern portion of the site. That's 3 more than there are here. That's true. But it's residential. The people living there are going to know it's a trail. They're going to be looking for it. They shouldn't be driving that fast.
They're likely just gonna think it's a sidewalk.
So.
I think it'd be a nice trail through the middle. I really do.
I mean, again, it gets back to then, how are we going to keep our, basically, clientele secure? There's a reason why we want private roads in Texas. Inviting anyone in the middle of our development is troublesome.
So, John, think somebody get ran over on that trail?
What trail? Not if it's outside there where it's supposed to be. I wouldn't have a trail down through the middle of my development. If nothing else, what about just take this
It'd almost be like a
take this
golf
scenario
path.
in consideration.
It'd be like.
If they went ahead and put that trail through the middle of their development, 8 foot wide, whether it be asphalt, concrete, does that make it automatically public at that time, in your opinion? What would you what would
I
you
would
say?
actually say you're right.
Okay.
It would.
In today's world with our trial lawyers, somebody's riding their bicycle down through the middle of Ball Homes development.
Who's responsible?
injures himself on that trail, it's not, who's it dedicated to? It's not. Ball Homes built it. It's their property at that point. If, correct me if I'm wrong. So who's liable? Who's gonna be sued?
I mean,
Ball
that would-
Homes is gonna be sued.
that'd be
because
the
it
same
happened
on
their
option
property.
two
I
as
can
well.
see all
There-
kinds of
there could be,
problems.
We
um,
immediately moved to add you all in as an indispensable party because it's public property. That's
There's
exactly
some-
what happened.
Yeah,
I
it
would-
just,
Bruce and Bruce are
yeah,
fighting for years.
yeah. And we gotta sit here longer than this and listen to it. You're exactly right.
There's
Yeah.
some-
And poor Charlie, he'll have to retire. He'll have to stay here, yeah.
You're gonna give me gray hair, you know?
Too late.
I
But even
believe-
option two, same way, same thing though.
No, it isn't,
I mean, you'd
because
be
all
off
they're
to the
gonna
side.
do is, in my, correct me if I'm wrong, all they're gonna do is dedicate the right of way. They're not gonna build anything, because there again, it brings up the maintenance issue. At least in my, that would be the way to do it, because we don't know for sure where we're gonna, connect the dots. So it would be unfair, I think, very unfair, for these folks to have to build, at this point, a trail to nowhere, and then accept the liability, accept the maintenance, and then when somebody else ties into it, if it is all approved, very good argument, then who, are they gonna take it over? Well, how can they take over a sidewalk going right through the middle of an apartment complex and make it public?
In-
Security reasons, there's all kinds of
In
reasons.
terms
I
of
think.
liability issues, there's some state.
Sorry, Megan,
You're
but it's
fine.
not a good
You're
idea.
you're in charge.
Part of the reason public entities take those things is the public entity, the idea of immunity from liability, for much more easily handled with the city and the state.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't still go out there and kill somebody, but negligence and there's just, you don't want, if you want to fall off Ball Homes property, not on the state's property.
I mean, I've seen trails along edges of subdivisions that work out very, very nice, biking trails, and maybe if it is on an easement, or maybe dedicated to, and then figure
Yeah.
out how to
Either
pay for
dedicated
it.
to the city, or there could be a maintenance
This way
type
the liability
agreement
then
with
isn't
Parks and
Ball
Rec.
Homes, but at least
I
it's-
believe there's also some state, I don't know if it's legislation or there's some language that's been adopted that works about liability on public trails. So the owner of the land is not necessarily responsible for the public who's choosing to use something in an access easement in a public trail setting.
Unless they walk 2
Right.
feet over
Right.
the easement, and suddenly they're on Ball Homes property, saying, this is where I got hit, I swear.
Well, but that's what they're talking about, is on the easement, but
Right.
that's the point. We're not gonna dedicate it, we can't dedicate an easement to the middle of the parking lot.
I'd just like to
What
see
ca-
some trails for some of the families in the community, because there really aren't any.
Can I throw one notion out? Because frankly, I like the location through the middle, but I do see the problems. But the thing that gets me is if we do option two, they're gonna have to have pedestrian walkways through the project anyway. If we take option two, they're gonna have to pretty much develop an option one through there just to have walkways for their own residents. We end up with both options and not just one. They're responsible for the liabilities and maintenance and all within, and then the entity, if we ever get one, is responsible for the one around, and the residents have two options. So it seems like to me that actually takes care of Megan's idea, and it takes care of their concerns too.
Yeah, I agree totally with that, but the only difference is there's gonna be at least 2 foot narrower. It's not gonna be the trail kind of thing that, Megan's looking for. But,
We're already 6 feet.
but,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, you've got that through there for the residents.
Yeah, so
that you
we'll
wanna
have,
talk- but
in
it-
effect, we'll have both.
But it'll be private versus.
Yeah.
And that's our key issue.
Yeah.
Brent's standing up here. There's probably a reason for that.
Don't complicate this, Brent.
Well, no, actually, my point is from a different angle. And all I wanted to say was, I thought Megan had a good point when she said that the PUD concept gives the developer certain things that he might not have gotten before. And so you're looking for some accommodations from the developer in exchange for that. And so all I wanted to say was that as far as financing the trail, I don't see why you couldn't ask the developer to either give funds now or put something in writing anyway that there's a financial consideration, even though they might not have to build it, but at least there's some kind of money thing there to help fund it when it is ready to go. Just a thought.
Logistically, the only concern really with that is, as far as dedicating funds now, we don't have anybody dedicated to. We couldn't just dedicate it to Scott County generally. It has to go to the acquisition body that's going to take the trail. That's kind of the issue. I mean, we're happy to put a note, I mean, because we're going to have the conversation anyways when we hand over the property as far as the easement goes. I mean, we can put something in the note with that regards, but we can't put the money up now because we can't put it up to anybody. It doesn't exist.
I guess maybe what I was thinking is at least you agree on a number.
Well, how much does it cost to build?
I don't know, you know.
That's the problem. Once again, we don't know what the trail looks like. We don't know who's doing it. We don't know where it's going. There's so many unknowns. How can you put a number? How can you build? How can you do anything at this point? But that's why we're happy to set aside property that is dedicated for this purpose. We won't be able to do anything with it. And hopefully when that body does come about, we will be able to have the conversation and dedicate it over to.
Ball Homes could get some good PR saying that you're the
Better believe it.
first to build the trails.
As much as I know Ball Homes, if there's a ribbon cutting ceremony, I'm sure we'll be part of it. And so that's something, we're a part of this community. That is for sure.
Mr. Chairman, in order to move things along, what would be appropriate at this point? What kind of motion? Would we choose option 1 or 2 and vote on that, and then go to approving the whole thing?
Yes, I would assume that we need to, someone needs to make a motion, and so we can vote on either option 1 or 2, and then we'll move on to the other.
Well, I move that we choose option 2.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, have a motion.
And that includes the waiver requested also?
There's no waiver, that's already existing on the site.
Oh, okay.
Are we talking about just the trail or the whole thing?
No, the
Just
number
the
of
trail,
units.
just the trail. That's all. I'm only moving.
He's only done the motion.
That's all you, okay. I would like to
Mr.
lump them all together so I get out of here. That's right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could make one small suggestion, if you want to just move for approval with option 2 as the condition, we can go that way. If that fails, then you can try with option 1. If that fails, then, well, I guess we'll go ahead and reset.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing that we didn't discuss, in the conditions, I left a blank space for the width of the easement.
We have a 20-foot right now.
20 foot.
Yeah.
Is that sufficient?
Kind of depends where it is and how it's designed. 30 is probably what we would look for, but.
And if we were already only being asked for 8 feet on option 1, we'll give them 20.
Well, that's just an 8-foot trail though. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, an 8-foot pavement. You prefer 30, but 20 would.
I mean, 20 would probably do the trick. I think 30 is what we would push for, probably, but 20 would get it done.
Can we split it with 25?
I was gonna say 25.
The Appalachian Trail's not 20 feet wide, is it?
Sometimes trails move, you got trees, you got fencing.
You have a 50-foot right of way for a 25-foot street, so two different standards.
The right of way.
Yeah.
Talking about an easement,
But an 8-foot trail.
The existing notes on there that talk about the Ball Homes working with the entity that will build the trail lists that they will reserve a 20-foot easement for an 8-foot pedestrian trail. So we've got both the numbers in the note, and the note says.
And you are willing to pay for the trail?
No. Me? No.
Ball Homes.
Geez,
I think it would be a great idea. Nice.
And we'll be able to talk about that when the body
You wouldn't know what they're paying for. That's the
Yeah,
point, Mark.
yeah. I-
There's no trail system.
How would you come up with a number that, right now, that Ball Home
Well, like
says they'll
Brent
put up
says,
to pay
right,
for?
we don't know how, but at least we can look into it. What'd you say, Megan?
So
Well-
we can come up with a number if it's along the existing sidewalk. They've got drainage, they've got it lined out. We know exactly what it is. That's why I like that location.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, my motion is on the floor.
Do we have a second
I second.
on
Oh,
option
you
two
seconded it,
at
okay.
20 feet wide? Are we gonna stipulate
All
that
right.
right now in the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a blank to fill in.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, are we voting
yeah,
only?
mine's blank on B, huh?
Are we voting only on the trail, or? are we
No, I
voting
tell you
on
what, let's do. Let's
approving-
get on with this. We're gonna vote for the whole thing.
Thank you.
Including the
So I'm going to
trail.
change my motion to approve it with option 2.
Thank you.
Okay,
So that's 6B in the conditions.
yes. Does my second go along with that?
And with all of the 9 conditions of approval and the existing variance. No, this is April 9th, yeah.
Do you have an updated copy of these conditions? Because mine doesn't have a 6B.
Mine doesn't either.
That should be it. The ones I printed with you today should be.
I don't think they went around, Megan. I think they're at somebody's.
6B?
Oh, that's on the second page.
Does it have the modified number 5?
Yes.
Are they all in front of Charlie and they haven't been passed out?
Okay,
'Cause I didn't get a.
Page
Yes,
two
this is
over
the
here.
plat. This is the plat. This is the.
She said she had a revision.
Now, what do we end up with, 20 feet?
So scratching A.
Oh, there it
Is
is.
that the modified 5
Right
that
there.
you
Five is the
posted?
modified.
Okay.
I thought she said she had revisions.
Do we have a second?
Stephen did.
Seconded.
Mr. Smith, seconded. Okay, yes will be to approve the motion, no will be to disapprove. Mr. Wiseman,
Yes.
Mr. Solsky,
Yes.
Mr. Moran,
Yes.
Ms. Holland,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Mizell.
Yes.
Pass, obviously.
And the plat.
Oh, yes. I think we can work through the subdivision plat pretty quickly. The point of doing the subdivision plat second was basically so that what we figured out with the easement could be added as a condition on this plat. The only thing that we're doing really with this plat is subdividing out that 24.56 acres from the parent tract of 124.6. Thank you. This is a slide we pulled up before. This is the existing tract. They're subdividing this portion of the site, which is R2 PUD, currently zoned, the site that we just spoke about for the development plan. Yeah, just flip for me. Everything looks good on this, other than that same, make this A1, and then we'll need to show that easement on this plat. And so that's the, I believe, 6th condition of approval, and we can fill in 20 to make that consistent.
We're good with that.
Any questions on the plat?
Any questions on the plat? You sure we don't want to talk about the trail on the plat? Okay, thank you, Megan.
Well, we did have one comment. Jan and I were discussing earlier, I think, our fencing regulations, anything that joins A1 property, the stipulation we're supposed to have the.
Yeah.
That's in the
Yeah.
regs and stuff. You look at that automatically,
Okay.
don't you?
Yeah.
The Greenbelt has additional requirements to make it a little bit nicer, but we'll be working with the
Okay.
fencing requirement and the
Majority
screening
of property
between
owners
the.
can choose not to enforce that, or?
That's true. If the adjoining owners chose to waive the fencing requirement, that could be removed. I don't know about on the Greenbelt side. Not on the Greenbelt side, but on the Bradley property or on the church property.
You are not going to oppose anything at this point, right?
No.
So we can get
No,
over
we
here.
wasn't. We're good. I promise you, I'd like that.
You got TED Talk?
We can have one.
I moved to approve this one
Thank you. Thank you.
with the same 20-foot easement, same 20-foot easement on number 6. All 6 conditions for approval. Do I get to hear a second?
A second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mr. Mazzell, second by Mr. Moran. Mr. Wiseman.
Yes.
Mr. Sulsky.
Yes.
Moran.
God bless you.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Ms. Holland.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Mazzell.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
I think that's all we have. You're free to go home. If you wish to
Has the hammer
adjourn.
come down yet?
Yes, sir.
Where's the hammer?
Running, I
Has the hammer come down, Mr. Chairman, please?
Put the hammer down, Rob.
Put the hammer
Thank
down.
you.
We're out of here.
I heard something.
We're adjourned.